events to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello, very good morning. 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 15th of December. We're thrilled to be with you. These are the stories matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast with Simon McCoy and Rosie Wright.
Adults in England must now show a COVID pass to enter large venues, despite nearly 100 Conservative MPs voting against the government's plans, with one senior Tory warning a leadership challenge has got to be on the cards. Well, do you think it's time for the Prime Minister to go? Let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Omicron threatens Christmas. England's Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty warns a big increase in hospitalisations is on the way. But with the government eyeing more restrictions, do you think the threat from the new variant has been overblown?
Calls are growing for the UK's social services system to be overhauled after the murder of another child let down by the system. This time, 16-month-old Star Hobson. Authorities missed 5 opportunities to save the little girl. So with so many red flags, is it time for reform?
Good news if you're expecting visitors this Christmas. The travel red list is scrapped, with all 11 countries removed and no more quarantine hotels. But restrictive testing rules remain in place.
At least the Queen is keeping calm and carrying on. As Omicron fears engulf the country, Her Majesty is still planning to hold her annual family Christmas party.
Hello, good morning to you. COVID passports will be introduced in England from today after the measure passed a vote on the Commons yesterday with Labour support. But 99 Conservatives voted against the government on the measure in the biggest revolt against Boris Johnson since he became Prime Minister.
38 Tories also voted against a mask-wearing mandate. 63 opposed compulsory vaccinations for NHS frontline workers. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said the Tory rebellion confirms that Boris is too weak to discharge the basic functions of government.
Meanwhile, the Conservatives' former London mayoral candidate, Sean Bailey, has resigned as chair of a police and crime committee over an illegal gathering organised by his team last year during Tier 2 restrictions.
Well, to help us break down this Tory rebellion is Tom Harwood, our political correspondent. Tom, a very good morning to you. How are you feeling? The dust has settled a little bit, but Sir Keir Starmer saying, you know, the Tories can't do the basics, really.
Yes, a lot of people were saying that the Labour Party probably should have provided some opposition here, should have tried to defeat the government. They certainly could have defeated the government if they wanted to with such a large Conservative rebellion. But actually, it's the Labour Party's tactics here looking forward to the longer term, showing that potentially they are a party less worried about defeating the government on day-to-day issues and more about presenting a united front about steady leadership. And I think that's the impression that Keir Starmer really was trying to get across, both in his address to the nation at 7 p.m. earlier this week, where he said, he didn't explicitly attack the government. He stuck to the message in terms of encouraging that booster rollout and set out Labour's position as to why they were backing these changes. It seems that the Labour Party is really trying to present itself as that alternative government, as the grown-ups in the room, while the Conservative Party squabble. That being said, it's interesting. While the debate was going on from 6:30 right through until the votes yesterday, it was very, very interesting to see that one by one, Conservative and indeed Labour MPs, I think about 4 members of the shadow cabinet, declared they had COVID and have been going into isolation. It seems that COVID has been sweeping through Westminster, somewhere where people are already vaccinated. I'm sure many people watching at home will know many people who have caught COVID in the last few days. I know I caught it at the end of last week. It seems that Omicron is absolutely sweeping through the country. And so there's a sense here, is Parliament now shutting the barn doors after the horse has bolted? To what extent has Omicron already swept through and is already sweeping through the country? How much more will vaccine passports really do to limit that?
Where is Boris Johnson's authority this morning?
It's weakened. And I think that if it weren't for the national mission of the booster rollout, this mission that Boris Johnson can attach himself to now, he would be in a much more perilous position. I think we've seen time and time again that Boris Johnson is someone who, when he doesn't have that clear sense of purpose, can flounder a little bit. His former aide, Dominic Cummings, referred to him as the shopping trolley crashing from aisle to aisle on various decisions. Well, when it comes to a big campaign, and we've seen Boris Johnson really attach himself to several big campaigns throughout his time in politics, that's when he can potentially shine more. So really attaching himself to this national booster campaign, the really huge effort to try and get everyone boosted by the end of the year, that would require 7 million jabs a week. The NHS says it thinks it can only do 5 million a week. So it's a really steep task. And that, I think, is what the Prime Minister is trying to throw himself into, to focus him away from some of the other distractions that we've heard over the last 3 weeks. And of course, a torrid time in the polls, almost 10 points behind the Labour Party now, after 2 years of soaring above them. But also, we've heard some reports that these mysterious letters have been going in to the chairman of the 1922 committee, Graham Brady. Now, it's always easy to over-egg this. I don't think anyone is potentially thinking that there'll be a leadership challenge imminently, but the fact that some members of Parliament, and indeed some new members of Parliament, have been expressing their lack of confidence in the Prime Minister does speak volumes.
Tom, what do you make of the sort of the narrative that's emerging that this could potentially be sort of locked down by stealth? We're hearing that it could be over 1 million people who actually on Christmas Day are isolating because there'll be so many people who've got this new variant of coronavirus. Do you think there's sort of any sort of strength in those claims?
I think really whether the votes went ahead yesterday in Parliament or not, there would still be some very serious claims to that, in that we know that Omicron is such an infectious variant. I'm sure that everyone knows people who've come down with this in the last few days. I mean, I think it's 4 or 5 members of the Shadow Cabinet even who in the last couple of days have declared they have coronavirus, many other MPs, many people in London specifically as well. Well, if you catch COVID today and you are in for a 10-day isolation, what is the day? It's the 15th of December. So if you catch COVID today, you'll be still in isolation for Christmas Day. And the scientists are saying that Omicron may well be doubling every 2 to 3 days. If we're having around 200,000 now, there's a bit of skepticism about the 200,000 infections a day number, but that is the number that the government is saying they estimate is going on in the population today. Well, if that is anything close to doubling over the next 2 to 3 days, and then again, we may well see 1 million people isolating at the time of Christmas, and that will very much feel like a lockdown to a lot of people, irrespective of any of this new legislation.
Very, very quick word about Sean Bailey. Another Christmas party. Heads have rolled, his this time. How significant is that?
I think it is quite significant. It shows that people weren't really paying much attention within politics to these Tier 2 restrictions. Now, Tier 2 allowed people to mix outside, but not inside. And very clearly, very damningly, there is a photograph of a large number of people of Sean Bailey's campaign team on the front page of the Daily Mirror today, showing that big party in Conservative campaign headquarters, just as those Tier 2 restrictions clicked in. Now, of course, people will say there are exemptions about work and try and try and excuse it that way, but clearly a party is a party. And I think it does speak to this them versus us attitude that I think a lot of people have been condemning politicians with.
Tom, thank you very much. Tom Harwood, our political correspondent, who'll be across this today here on GB News. Right now, at 6:09, we'll give you an overview of the front pages. We've just seen the Mirror, but let's look at the Eye. Omicron threatens a normal Christmas, leads the paper. It says the government is studying the possibility of further restrictions with household bubbles and social distancing if rates soar.
The Metro leads with the 99-strong Tory rebellion and describes it as a Christmas stuffing. The paper reports that the revolt wasn't quelled despite Boris holding last-minute meetings with backbenchers and a last gasp ring round to secure support.
The Herald has accused ministers of imposing lockdown by stealth. This is after Nicola Sturgeon urged Scots to minimise socialising to a maximum of 3 households at once before and after Christmas. But she insisted she was not asking people to cancel their Christmases.
Ministers flying blind on the size of the Omicron wave, leads The Independent. A lack of COVID tests has left the government unsure over the full scale of the Omicron wave as it tries to calculate whether further restrictions will be needed.
The Guardian says a big Tory rebellion over vaccine passports underlines the Prime Minister's increasingly shaky grip over his party.
The Telegraph's headline, Tory COVID rebels deal hammer blow to Johnson's authority. Elsewhere on the front page, government COVID advisor Professor Robert Dingwall from Nottingham Trent University believes Britain's Omicron wave may be no worse than a flu pandemic.
The Times also leads on that significant rebellion that stunned the Prime Minister, plus the gloomy prediction that more than 1 million people could be in isolation on Christmas Day.
The Sun says keep calm like mum. The Queen is reportedly keeping calm as Omicron fears engulf the government and still plans to hold her family Christmas party.
A week after the Daily Star launched its hunt for Dominic Raab's missing brain, they say the top Tory is still brainless. It's after the Deputy Prime Minister said 250 people were in hospital with Omicron before revealing hours later the figure was just 10.
Let's pick up on all this. David Wooding, assistant editor at The Sun, joins us now. David, good morning to you.
Morning, Simon.
My God, that was worse than anybody thought it was going to be last night for the Prime Minister.
Yes, it was double the rebellion last year over the lockdown restrictions. I think it got 55 last year. And to reach 99, the biggest rebellion in Boris Johnson's premiership. So, yes, a big warning shot across the bows for the Prime Minister.
How do you think Boris Johnson's feeling this morning? Worried, nervous, anxious, defiant?
Bruised, battered, perhaps a little worried, but he has a great skill of bouncing back. But even those who have faith in that are starting to question whether this is a line has been crossed here. We've had so many unforced errors from the number 10 team, the latest of which is the revelation of those parties. It just seems to be limping from one problem to another. And of course, today he's got Prime Minister's questions, and Keir Starmer, who will no doubt have an extra spring in his step when he goes into the chamber and jousts with the Prime Minister across the dispatch box, will no doubt add to his problems. And then tomorrow we have the by-election in North Shropshire, where the Conservatives have got a 23,000 majority, but there's a lot of gloom in the camp of campaigners who are saying they might even lose this seat. And if that happened, then really alarm bells will be clanging at a high decibel rate in Whitehall tomorrow.
You sort of wonder why Keir Starmer didn't go for the jugular last night. If he'd voted against the government, they'd have lost.
Yes, but he was trying to take the moral high ground here. He believes in lockdown or certainly in restrictions. And it's true that the polls are showing that the public in general like the idea of these safety precautions. I know a lot of people don't, but there is a large number of people who are alarmed and worried and concerned about their health, and they're perhaps swinging the public opinion. The public opinion is perhaps swinging the Labour leader in that direction.
These sort of ideas of a leadership challenge, how seriously are you taking them?
Well, I don't think we're there yet. So, again, all eyes will be on North Shropshire tomorrow. The Conservatives certainly can't afford to lose that one. And then we've got, I think at number 10, they're just hoping to limp to Christmas and have that break and then regroup and reboot in the new year. But of course, they tried a reboot a week ago when they had this law and order crackdown. And that seemed to get overtaken by everything else that has been revealed. It's one of those mysteries of politics that when you make a slip up and you go on that downward slope, it's very difficult to clamber back up again and get things back on an even keel. And that's the problem the government have got at the moment. Of course, going into the new year, we then have the local elections in May. And in May, we're probably about a year from what could be the favourite date for a general election, because the Prime Minister must hold a general election by the end of 2024. So 23 would be a good year to go. So people will be looking at, if we're going to have a new leader in, we'll have to do it soon because we want time for him or her to bed in. And already there is talk, apart from like Tom, your correspondent, was saying earlier, the letters going in, that there's talk already of manoeuvres by some of the possible contenders, or certainly allies close to those contenders.
And you alluded to this already, but once a party loses discipline, it's very hard to get that back.
Yes, and what we saw last night, Simon, with this rebellion, it wasn't just people angry about COVID. I think people were taking the opportunity to have a go at the Prime Minister. You had the COVID recovery group of MPs who don't like these restrictions out of principle, but then you've got the Remainers in Parliament who don't like Boris Johnson for having delivered Brexit. And even those outside Parliament are now laying into him. You know, you had Gavin Barwell, who's in the Lords, tweeting about Labour ahead in the polls. You had people like David Gauke, the minister who had the whip removed and is now no longer an MP. And Anna Soubry, she's reappeared. And goodness gracious, the former speaker, John Bercow, going on TV and accused the Prime Minister of being a narcissist and the worst Prime Minister in memory. So there's a lot of people lining up to have a pot shot at the Prime Minister right now. So it is a difficult spell for him.
Did you say that was John Bercow who said that?
Yes. He said
the irony.
Yes, I know.
We'll leave it there.
Mr. Kettle.
Great to see you, David. Thanks very much.
So as a result of those votes last night, in England there are some significant changes. From today, you'll have to show the NHS COVID pass to gain entry to a number of venues and events in England. Nightclubs, large indoor venues, bigger football stadiums that require either a negative lateral flow test or proof of vaccination for anyone over the age of 18.
Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis joins us now live from Nottingham. Good morning to you. So just tell us what the new restrictions are.
Good morning. Yeah, this is the COVID pass that many people have feared throughout the pandemic would come in. We did see something quite similar in the before summer when lockdowns were eased and things got a little bit back to normal. Just to reiterate, it's a COVID pass, so it's not exactly a vaccine passport as some people might refer to it as. You can show your vaccine status to show that you've been double jabbed, or you can also show a lateral flow test, a negative lateral flow test, or you can show that you've had a negative PCR. So why would you actually need something like that? Well, if you come to Nottingham, which is a big city for clubbing, you'd need it if you want to get into a nightclub from today. You'd also need it if you wanted to go into an unseated 500 plus venues. So that could be something like a standing art gallery or something like that might have a lot of people going into it. You also might need it if you're in an unseated outdoor venue. So that could be 4,000 people plus, and then any venue that's 10,000 plus. So that's your much bigger events, that's your festivals and that sort of thing. Just to remind you, this comes in as part of Plan B restrictions, part of the winter COVID plan that the government put in place earlier this year before we started getting into this period. It also comes in line with a lot of what's happening in Scotland. These are new restrictions for England, but it's in line with what's going on in Scotland, Northern Ireland and of course Wales as well.
Well, I know that you've been speaking to locals about how they feel about the idea of these passes coming in. What's been the general sentiment?
Yeah, sure. So last night, before the restrictions came in, and slightly before we saw that Tory rebellion of about 100 Tory backbench MPs voting against these measures, against what the government wanted to get in. As you've been talking about this morning, that did pass. So that is now a legal requirement to follow these rules. But the people that I spoke to, it was surprisingly mixed, despite the amount of people that have been vaccinated in England. It was surprisingly mixed, the amount of people that in one spot that I saw. Usually you find that the people that you speak to, the data kind of corroborates what you hear on the ground, but a lot of people actually saying that they're not a big fan of it. One young man that I spoke to said that it was because he wanted to go to the football. Another young lady that I spoke to that you're about to hear from said it's because of herbal medicine. Let's hear from that selection of people now.
Not going to get vaccinated, so I'm not going to be going out clubbing when everything is asking for passports, because I won't have the capacity, and also it's kind of unsafe for me to do so.
This week I'm down in London attending a theatre in the West End. Insofar as I'm required to present the COVID passport, I'm more than happy to do so. I think it's a small price to pay to ensure that the public and the rest of the country remain safe.
I go to football and gigs, and the passport's getting in the way of me doing the things I want to do. So at the end of the day, I don't really think people need to have a vaccine passport to go somewhere.
I'm putting up with it, to tell the truth. I mean, it'd be nice if we didn't have to do it, but all in all, it's for the good of everybody, and it sort of does sort out the people that care about the other people, really.
I can see it being a bit of a nuisance. It's an extra procedure that you have to take for a somewhat normal night. But yeah, for me, I didn't really have too much of a problem with being vaccinated, just because you're kind of protecting your family, your friends, your loved ones.
To make sure that everyone's safe going forward in the new year and stuff, it's a small price to pay.
As I say, Nottingham is a big city for clubbing. We've also got a lot of students that come to this part of the East Midlands from all around us, as well as coming here from around the country as well. 60,000 students here, so it does pose a big impact on the economy, doing things like introducing COVID passes. A lot of the people that you did see there, they are quite keen on it, but people who actually work in this industry are not very happy, particularly the nightclub industry. So the Nighttime Industries Association CEO Michael Kill says that he's very disappointed that MPs have today voted to law COVID passports for nightclub. They also referenced that in the last few weeks and months that there's been restrictions that are similar to the COVID passport in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. They've seen, this is Wales and Scotland, it's been up to 30% that trade has been down, especially around this time of Christmas. We know it's probably the biggest time for the hospitality industry, but I will stress that this doesn't apply to pubs, it's nightclubs and then those larger venues as well.
Will, thank you very much speaking to us there from Nottingham about how the public are feeling about the new COVID passes.
You're watching The Great British Breakfast. Now, coming up, a 16-month-old was killed by her mother's partner in another case of lockdown child abuse. We'll discuss how baby Star was let down by the system. That's all to come after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Some brighter skies about first thing this morning and a better chance, I think, in the north and the east of some sunshine by the afternoon. Otherwise, largely cloudy skies with some rain, mostly associated with this weather front, which is currently sinking south across Scotland, pushing into Northern Ireland, parts of northern England as well. Meanwhile, high pressure over the continent extends its influence across southern parts of the UK. That is going to bring a return to more widespread settled weather through the next few days, but for the time being, it's introducing a lot of cloud cover. Cloudy skies for the south of England, parts of mid and south Wales. Also this cloudier zone associated with a weather front that's sinking south, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England. But a good chance elsewhere of sunny skies once any early fog lifts. And temperatures again above average for the time of year, 11 to 13 Celsius, a mild afternoon to come. Now, this area of cloud and outbreaks of light rain and drizzle pushes north again, clearing from Northern Ireland as well as northern England during Wednesday evening and moving through the rest of Scotland. There'll also be a lot of cloud, some cloud covering hills across Wales and the southwest, southern England as well. But clear spells in between for southern Scotland, parts of northern and eastern England will lead to a chilly start tomorrow morning and a few fog patches first thing as well. But on the whole, it's a grey start for many. A lot of cloud, particularly in the south and the west, and this area of rain moving through the far north of Scotland during the morning. After lunch, I think that rain clears, and then for the vast majority, it's actually looking dry tomorrow afternoon. A lot of cloud on the map, but there will be some sunshine, particularly in eastern parts of England and Scotland, and temperatures are trending downwards, so that it's turning colder later this week. But high pressure extends across the UK during Thursday, Friday and into the weekend. That will lead to a lot of settled weather, still a lot of cloud, particularly in the west, and also turning colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're
watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
It's coming up to 6:30. Welcome back to the Great British Breakfast. Now, 2 women will be sentenced later for their parts in the murder of 16-month-old Star Hobson from West Yorkshire. Star's mum, Frankie Smith, was cleared of her daughter's killing yesterday, but she was found guilty of causing or allowing Star's death to take place. Smith's partner, Savannah Brockhill, was found guilty of Star's murder, and the pair will be sentenced this afternoon.
Well, the report from our Yorkshire and Humber reporter Kevin Larkin contains content that some of you may find distressing.
16-month-old Star Hobson, another child failed in Britain. Failed by her mum's partner who ended her short life. Failed by her mum who allowed Star to be killed. And failed by the authorities who didn't prevent her death. Supply at their home in Keighley, where Star endured months of beatings and psychological harm from those who the toddler should have felt safest with. Star's mum, Frankie Smith, was cleared of murder at Bradford Crown Court yesterday, but the 20-year-old was convicted of causing or allowing her daughter's death. It was 28-year-old Savannah Brockhill who ended Star's life less than a month after this video was taken. Described the punching, kicking and stamping to Star's abdomen, which ended her life in September last year. Jurors also saw CCTV of Brock Hill hitting Starr 21 times in 3 hours, moments after this was filmed, as Starr sat in a car seat. This was just 8 days before her death.
As you can see, we've got some sound problems with that report from Kevin, yeah, sorry about that.
Well, we can be joined now by Marilyn Horse, who's the CEO and founder of the charity Freedom from Abuse. Marilyn, very good morning to you. It feels like not very long ago at all, less than a fortnight ago, we were having a conversation about another case, another child failed by authorities and mistreated in the most vile way by their parents. What went wrong here?
It's the same old, isn't it? Same old, same old. Nobody stepping up, nobody doing their job correctly. 5 referrals made, including the babysitter. And what did they think? The authorities thought that the family, the friends were being malicious because they didn't like the girlfriend. Well, you know, that's just not acceptable, is it? 5 referrals, classic situation. The girlfriend began to isolate the family, just like what happened with little Arthur, and then moved away, and people not listening. I mean, it just beggars belief. That child suffering. I had just come in yesterday from taking my own little 18-month granddaughter to see Father Christmas, and the news came out, and I just sat and cried. I cry from frustration as well, because things are not happening. The system is broken. After I was on last time with you, I wrote to the Department of Education, and I also put out an appeal to all my contacts. And I heard from GPs, I heard from teachers, social workers, and here's one social worker here now, if you don't mind me saying, you know, an experienced social worker. And the lady says here, the fact is we are worked into the ground due to poor leadership, poor management of services, lack of government funding and training. We have to work in an environment where, due to the number of referrals coming in and the lack of social workers joining the profession, child protection social workers particularly, the level of risk to be managed is extremely high. Good workers are leaving in their droves, and we are simply fighting a system that isn't working. Correct. It isn't working. It hasn't worked for a very long time, and we can't just keep blaming COVID.
Well, we can't just blame social workers either. We must blame the 2 women who were responsible, first of all. But there were doctors involved here. There was a consultant paediatrician who said we had a toddler with unexplained bruising. I became blinded to what was obvious. A consultant paediatrician. I should have been more nuanced. I should have kept open the possibility of traumatic injury. A consultant immunologist. I'm not ashamed of not raising concern about her ear injury. I missed an important, significant event. And it goes on.
Of course, the perpetrators are the 2 women, for sure. Definitely they are. But you look at all the people involved, the police, everybody involved. No, we can't keep blaming social workers. It is a collective social responsibility. There's a whole load of people there that are supposed to be and would call themselves experts that did not communicate, There's too many people involved half the time, and the things fall down the cracks. It is heartbreaking to see this. And the one thing that worries me every day is how many children like little Starr, like Arthur, are still alive, but only by a heartbeat, that are being missed. The system, we had Dame, what's her name, somebody, D'Souza, talking a couple of weeks ago, the voice of the child must be heard. The voice of the child hasn't been heard for decades. And do you know what? The problem is so big, it's seismic. And what bothers me, unless they change the model and really get to grips with this, then we're going to be back here in a month's time, 2 years' time. Nothing's changing. The model isn't changing. And there's no appetite for it. You've got to dig down deep. Yes, these 2 women were to blame, of course. And I know when I came on last time, Simon, I said about the early years, and I remember you saying to me, people are sick of people hearing about people's past. You cannot deny it. You don't become like that woman overnight. It goes back to those early years where there is that brokenness, that distortion of thinking, their distorted actions. And we have to do more. And this social worker here that wrote to me said, we are not doing enough with the early years. And that is absolutely right. As a society, as a government, we are not dealing with early years and how to parent, and to stop bringing in another round of parents that are broken. This is the trouble. Society is broken, and we have to help manage the early 5 years of a child's life. I go into prisons. I talk to sex offenders. I talk to all sorts of people that have been convicted. Those early 5 years. If you're going to look at young offenders, 80% of young offenders had adverse childhood experiences, and you can't deny it. It's real, whether people want to hear it or not. That is the fact.
Marilyn, thank you very much. The Daily Mail's got it. Not again is their front page, and it's
absolutely.
It's exactly
Tragic.
right, isn't it? Yeah, it's. I wish it wasn't under these circumstances, but it's good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us. That's Marilyn Hawes. The front page of the Mirror, our little star. She went to hell before she went to heaven. It says in the Metros. Sorry, it is just and so soon after the story of baby Arthur. There we go.
Coming up here on the programme, the government has announced it will step in and pay the compensation for a group of post office workers who were falsely convicted of theft. We'll be talking to a victim after the break.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It's coming up to 20 to 7. You're watching The Great British Breakfast with Rosie and Simon. Very good morning to you.
Now, people in North Shropshire are going to head to the polls tomorrow to pick their next MP. The by-election was triggered by the departure of the Conservative MP, Owen Paterson, who resigned in November after he broke parliamentary rules on paid lobbying. He'd been the MP there for 24 years. But is this ultra-safe Conservative seat now about to change?
Balvinda Sidhu has been speaking to the people of North Shropshire.
People in Oswestry in North Shropshire are getting ready for Christmas, but before that they have to choose their next MP. This by-election has been triggered by the resignation of Owen Paterson, who broke the parliamentary rules on paid lobbying. He's been the MP here for 24 years. This seat in North Shropshire has been held by the Conservatives for nearly 200 years. It's considered an ultra-safe seat. In the last general election, Owen Paterson safely won with 63% of the vote. But will the Tory sleaze row and that alleged Christmas party change people's voting habits here?
Based on obviously what's gone on in the last few weeks and Boris's behaviour over the last few days, and we won't be voting Tory anymore now. We're going to change our mind now.
I know there's a really good female candidate standing, and I would never necessarily have looked at that party. However, I do think that her values and what she's standing for are fantastic.
I've always voted Tory. Yes, well, you got to stick by them thick and thin. I don't believe in kicking anyone when they're down.
I've had a few people in saying that they will not be voting Conservative this time, which I find interesting. We'll see whether that comes up in the numbers and whether it's a big enough swing for it to go Lib Dem or Green.
North Shropshire is a large rural constituency lying on the Welsh border. It's made up of 5 market towns: Wem, Whitchurch, Oswestry, Ellesmere and Market Drayton. At a hustings event in Whitchurch, people shared the issues they want their next MP to prioritise.
We lost our ambulance station some years ago, and then Market Drayton, which is about 25 minutes away, lost theirs more recently, so we have no facilities for the ambulances to get to us quickly.
A total change of the mainline parties, because every one of them's let us down. They've locked us down for 2 years. My own beef is with Boris Johnson. I think most of what he's done is a shambles.
We have got one doctor's surgery to cater for nearly 10,000 people. Our own surgery closed in March and was never reopened.
Standing for the Tories is Dr Neil Shastri Hurst, a former military doctor, now a barrister and a new dad.
I think I bring my experience, having worked on the front line of the NHS, having worked in the military, and more recently having worked as a barrister, to advocate effectively on behalf of people here in North Shropshire. There's been a lot of mudslinging, political mudslinging in this campaign, but actually I'm the only candidate who's put forward clear, positive plan for North Shropshire. And finally, I'm absolutely committed, cast iron guarantee. This is where we're going to live as a family. This is where I'm going to raise my now 7-week-old son.
Ben Wood was born and raised in North Shropshire and says he wants to bring decency back to politics.
I am fighting in this election for the future of North Shropshire, for our public services and for new opportunities in the area. And that's exactly what I'm doing between now and polling day. People are saying to me they want a sense of decency back in their politics. And it's got to start at a local level, but you know what, it goes right up to the Prime Minister as well. And that's what we're trying to start here, bring back a sense of decency into our politics.
But the bookies suggest that the Lib Dems have a real chance of pulling off what would be a huge upset. Now, we have tried to speak to Helen Morgan, but she hasn't been available, so we caught up with senior Liberal Democrat MP Christine Jardine.
She is someone who will be out there listening to the community all the time, talking to them all year round, listening to what they have to say about GP waiting times, about the strain that the ambulance service is under at the moment, about the pressures on the farming community. Helen appreciates these things. She will be out there. She will be working for people who at the moment feel completely taken for granted by a Conservative government.
Standing for the Green Party is Duncan Kerr, who says he wants to improve local services.
It's all about bringing the community together, I think. We've been rather neglected for too many years. We've got some fantastic people and some fantastic businesses. We've got great food producers, for instance, but we've not had an MP to really celebrate and bring that together. We need to get the public transport sorted out. The bus service is incredibly poor around here.
Voters will go to the polls tomorrow and will find out the result on Friday morning, just before Christmas.
And that was Balvinder Sidhu reporting there from North Shropshire.
Of course, we'll keep you up to date with the developments of that by-election across the week here. But let's show you a full list of all the 14 candidates and the parties that they're running for. Andrew Allen, Boris Bunged, Martin Daubney, Russell Dean, James Alexander Elliott, Howling Lord Hope, El Jesse and Yolande Kenwood, Duncan Kerr, Helen Morgan, Neil Shastri Hurst and Susie Akers-Smith. And finally, Kirsty Walmsley and Ben Wood.
Now, nearly 100 Tory MPs voted against their own government over vaccine passports last night in what's the biggest revolt against the Prime Minister by his own party since he took office. Dozens of Tory MPs also voted against other COVID Plan B measures on mask wearing and compulsory vaccines for NHS workers.
Brendan Chilton is the CEO of the Independent Business Network and Labour councillor in Ashford and joins us now. Brendan, how are you feeling? The restrictions have gone through. Labour had the chance to scupper them. What would actually have been better for business?
What would have been better for business if these measures had never gone through at all? Let's be clear what this is going to mean. It's going to mean venues are going to need to either redeploy staff or take on new staff at a time when their revenues are falling because people are scared because of the new Omicron variant, which is milder than the Delta variant, which we've probably all had at some point over the past year. This is going to have a terrible impact for business at a time of year, as I said, when many businesses were hoping to see their revenues increase to make up for the losses of the past year. And unfortunately, that is not going to happen, which is going to have a very bad impact on the local and national economy.
So has Keir Starmer missed a trick here? Because, as Rosie was saying, if Labour had voted against, they'd have won.
I think 8 Labour MPs voted against the measures, and a lot of other Labour MPs were very concerned about the mandatory vaccination of NHS workers, which I think they're absolutely right to be. I personally don't think that the measures needed to be passed through Parliament yesterday. I think they're going to have a very bad impact on business, and I think it's going to have a wider impact on the economy. So Keir Starmer, I personally think, should have ordered Labour MPs to vote against those measures.
It's really difficult, isn't it, for the government? Do they put in these measures and potentially have this variant run rife? It looks like it could do that despite of the measures. If you were in charge then and you wanted to make sure these businesses could stay open and they could welcome customers, what kind of regulations would you think would be appropriate?
I think the first thing to say is we are going to have new variants of this virus forever and a day. In 10 years' time, there will be a new variant. Nay, in 100 years' time, there will be a new variant of this virus. That is the nature of viruses. And we cannot continue to alter people's lives, lock down parts of the economy, change regulations every time a new variant exists, especially when the South African scientists have said this one is milder than the one we currently at large in the UK. What I would have done is what businesses have done throughout the course of this pandemic. Allow them to do what they do, which is run their own business and ensure their customers get the best service they can. Of course, if businesses wish to have sanitising, social distancing, mask wearing, that's absolutely fine, and I totally understand why people might feel safer if they're wearing masks in large venues or indeed in any venue, including on things like public transport. But this constant changing of the goalposts, particularly for the hospitality sector, really is now starting to have a terrible impact on those businesses and I say on the wider economy.
Brendan, always good to see you. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Brendan Chilton.
Now, coming up here, the Eichmann in Jerusalem trial is being revisited 60 years after the Nazi was sentenced to death. We look at what it meant for survivors after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Some brighter skies about first thing this morning and a better chance, I think, in the north and the east of some sunshine by the afternoon. Otherwise, largely cloudy skies with some rain, mostly associated with this weather front, which is currently sinking south across Scotland, pushing into Northern Ireland, parts of northern England as well. Meanwhile, high pressure over the continent extends its influence across southern parts of the UK. That is going to bring a return to more widespread settled weather through the next few days, but for the time being, it's introducing a lot of cloud cover. Cloudy skies for the south of England, parts of mid and south Wales. Also this cloudier zone associated with a weather front that's sinking south, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England. But a good chance elsewhere of sunny skies once any early fog lifts. And temperatures again above average for the time of year, 11 to 13 Celsius, a mild afternoon to come. Now, this area of cloud and outbreaks of light rain and drizzle pushes north again, clearing from Northern Ireland as well as northern England during Wednesday evening and moving through the rest of Scotland. There'll also be a lot of cloud, some cloud covering hills across Wales and the southwest, southern England as well. But clear spells in between for southern Scotland, parts of northern and eastern England will lead to a chilly start tomorrow morning and a few fog patches first thing as well. But on the whole, it's a grey start for many. A lot of cloud, particularly in the south and the west, and this area of rain moving through the far north of Scotland during the morning. After lunch, I think that rain clears, and then for the vast majority, it's actually looking dry tomorrow afternoon. A lot of cloud on the map, but there will be some sunshine, particularly in eastern parts of England and Scotland, and temperatures are trending downwards, so that it's turning colder later this week. But high pressure extends across the UK during Thursday, Friday and into the weekend. That will lead to a lot of settled weather, still a lot of cloud, particularly in the west, and also turning colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to the programme, 9 minutes to 7. Now, victims have welcomed the government's intervention to pay compensation to former post office workers who were falsely convicted of theft in the Horizon IT scandal. Hundreds of sub-postmasters were wrongly prosecuted after a faulty IT system made it look like money had been taken from branch accounts. The Post Office says it's unable to cover the compensation payments. But ministers confirmed yesterday the government will step in.
The final sum is still unclear, but it's likely to cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of pounds. So far, 72 convictions have been overturned. Many more are currently being processed. Well, Janet Bradbury is one of the victims who was falsely prosecuted, and David Enright is a partner at Howe & Co Solicitors who's representing more than 150 postmasters, and both of them join us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Janet, first of all, just briefly, if you would, explain when you realised things were going wrong, what it was that happened, and how you were pouring your own money to try and cover it up.
Yes, well, can I just say I wasn't actually prosecuted, thanks to a Fujitsu engineer who, on his last day working for them, spilled the beans, and I resigned. But I'd also put an awful lot of money into the post office. So I came home and I was still getting threatening letters of prosecution every month for about 6 months. And then I saw Lord Arbuthnot on BBC Breakfast and realised there was a group of other people. I went down to the Citizens' Advice. I brought all my paperwork back with me, which isn't normally allowed, but I thought I'm going to need this one day. And Citizens' Advice solicitor said, copy everything, send it to the post office solicitors who'd been threatening me. And I did. I didn't hear anything for 6 months. And so I rung them up and they told me that it wasn't in the public interest to pursue this. And they were still asking me for £10,000.
When you bought the post office, you sold the equity in your own home, bought a post office, and then just explain what happened. Because of a computer error, what was happening was that there was money in the account that wasn't there, and when you realised there was this gap, you had to fill it with your own cash.
That's right. My husband had to take £10,000 out of his pension pot. It was fine until
they put an ATM machine in my post office. And then the first time I balanced the ATM machine, it told me that I'd put £2,000 in to fill it. When I knew I hadn't, I put £1,000 in. So you ring the helpline and they tell you, oh, just reverse this out. And it doubles up the error. So that's £4,000 short. And then bit by bit, you know, everything went wrong. I really am one of the lucky ones, because without that Fujitsu engineer telling me what was going on his last day working for them, I would have carried on, and it could have been thousands and thousands like other poor people, and I would have been prosecuted. I mean, one of the ladies, 19 years old, she was carted off to Holloway prison. And while she was in there, saw somebody that had hung themselves. I mean, she was 19 years old. You never get over that. She's now 37. That's ruined her life. So I consider myself, although we've been really through it, very, very lucky.
David, that is scandalous that Janet would see herself as lucky, considering even just the turmoil that she's gone through in terms of the financial loss, the acute emotional stress. How come this sort of injustice at this scale was possible and for so long?
Well, what business do you buy, invest your own money and then sign the Official Secrets Act? Because when you do that, there's a certain atmosphere of, gosh, you don't question this, you don't question that. You know, I mean, I don't know whether it's still done today, but signing the Official Secrets Act, as if you're working
David
for MI5.
To see. David, you're representing people like Janet. You know, where do you go now? How do you secure some kind of compensation to put some of these wrongs right?
Well, Janet is a client of mine and a very brave woman, and astonishingly, she describes herself as one of the lucky ones. Janet is a sub-postmaster who will not receive anything from this government announcement yesterday. Let's first of all frame who the victims are. Rosie, you and Simon and everyone watching knows a victim. They are the people like Janet who will be helping you with your Christmas cards over the next couple of weeks and packages at home to family and friends. Pillars of the community, people of impeccable reputation. The post office introduced a computer system called Horizon in about 2000. It was deeply flawed and it created false balances, just like happened to Janet, from thin air. The post office demanded that money that didn't exist from sub-postmasters like Janet and destroyed their lives. They lost their homes, they lost their businesses, they lost their reputations. Now, yesterday's announcement by Paul Scully was a baby step in the right direction. Let's be clear, it will only compensate a fraction of a subgroup of victims. There are perhaps 2,500 victims of this, decent, hard-working, small business people running post offices in your communities. Yesterday's announcement will affect 79 of them. Lord Arbuthnot yesterday, along with Alan Bates, a leading campaigner, said that the government were continuing to drag their feet, and they are. The Prime Minister described this as the greatest miscarriage of justice in British history, and it is, because it affects every single corner of this country and affects the most decent of people in each of our communities, all of whom were affected, lost many thousands of pounds, as you've seen, perhaps 800 wrongly convicted, many hundreds more pursued through the civil courts to bankruptcy. And this announcement yesterday is a small step in the right direction, but the government needs to rapidly go much further, put their arms around this problem, a problem of their making. They own the post office, and to put right the situation of people like Janet and like sub-postmasters right across the country who lost everything. This cannot be allowed to drag on.
Janet, if I can just end talking to you, that you epitomise what David's just been describing. Decency, calmness. You're exactly the sort of person when you walk into a post office that you want to see. The one thing that you haven't displayed is any anger. If I was you, I would be furious with the post office over this.
Simon, I'm on television. I really, you know, there's a lot of anger. Once I put this phone down, you know, I really am seething inside. I just feel so sorry for all those that went to prison. I mean, if you read Nick Wallace's book, The Great Post Office Scandal, you would be horrified of what's happened to people. One poor man walked in front of a bus. You know, I thank goodness for that Fujitsu engineer, because I would have ended up in the same position as them. So, well, I just wished I could find him.
Yeah. Well, if he's watching, maybe we'll be able to get you in touch. But Janet Bradbury, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much. And David Enright, their partner of Howe & Co. Thank you both for what is one of the most scandalous stories we've covered. You're watching The Great British Breakfast. Back in a moment.
Well, a very good morning to you. It is Wednesday, the 15th of December. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on The Great British Breakfast with Simon McCoy and Rosie Wright.
Adults in England must now show a COVID pass to enter large venues, despite nearly 100 Conservative MPs voting against the government's plans, with one senior Tory warning a leadership challenge has got to be on the cards. Do you think it's time for the Prime Minister to go? Let us know. GBviews at gbnews.uk.
Omicron threatens Christmas. England's Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty warns a big increase in hospitalisations is on the way. But with the government eyeing more restrictions, do you think the threat from the new variant has been overblown?
Calls are growing for the UK's social services system to be overhauled after the murder of another child let down by the system. This time, 16-month-old Star Hobson. Authorities missed 5 opportunities to save the little girl. So with so many red flags missed, is it time for reform?
Well, good news if you're expecting visitors this Christmas. The travel red list has been scrapped, with all 11 countries removed and no more quarantine hotels. But restrictive testing rules do remain in place.
But at least the Queen is keeping calm and carrying on as Omicron fears engulf the country. Her Majesty is still planning to hold her annual family Christmas party.
Well, a very good morning to you now. COVID passports are going to be introduced in England from today after the measure was passed by a vote in the House of Commons yesterday with the support of the Labour Party. 99 Conservatives, though, voted against the government on the measure. That's the biggest revolt against Boris Johnson since he became Prime Minister.
38 Tories also voted against a mask-wearing mandate and 63 opposed compulsory vaccinations for NHS frontline workers. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said the Tory rebellion confirms that Boris is too weak to discharge the basic functions of government. Meanwhile, the Conservatives' former London mayoral candidate, Sean Bailey, has resigned as chair of a police and crime committee over an illegal gathering organised by his team last year during Tier 2 restrictions.
Well, to help us break down this Tory rebellion is Tom Harwood, GB News' political correspondent. Tom, a very good morning to you. This is bruising for Boris Johnson, to say the least.
It certainly is, and it's not just that enormous number of almost 100 Conservative MPs that matters here. Of course, that's the largest rebellion that Boris Johnson has faced as Prime Minister. It's reminiscent of the rebellions that Theresa May was facing in her final days as Prime Minister. But what's really gruelling here for Boris Johnson is the breadth of this rebellion. It's not just the usual suspects. It's not just the Steve Bakers and the Mark Harpers of the COVID recovery group, those people who've always opposed COVID restrictions, or those that they've seen to be more onerous COVID restrictions. No, this is also including people like Damien Green, people very close to Theresa May, the centrists of the Conservative Party, but also, crucially, the Scottish Conservatives, the Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross, Andrew Bowie, who was recently vice chairman of the Conservative Party. This is a very broad coalition of people standing up against mainly vaccine passports. And really, I think we can read into this a big marker that is being laid down in Parliament now. This isn't just about vaccine passports. This is about the direction that the country now goes in. It's going to be very, very difficult for the government to bring forward any further kind of more onerous restriction. Really, MPs have put their marker in the sand now, saying, we've gone this far, we'll go no further.
This is about Boris Johnson's leadership, and he may have saved it, but for now, there is a sense that the demise, the history will judge this as a very important moment in the Johnson premiership.
Boris is no longer made of Teflon. That is absolutely clear. The Prime Minister, who had been able to ride high in the polls above all the other scandals up until last month, has finally had a big reality check, came crashing down in the polls towards the end of last month. And it seems that all of these previous little scandals that he seemed to be able to skirt over now suddenly start to matter. It's interesting that Boris Johnson personally was doing the ring round of Conservative MPs yesterday evening, trying to get them on board. He sent in Chris Whitty to give a briefing to MPs as well. That clearly wasn't enough to get significant numbers of those rebels within his party to change their mind. And indeed, it's an embarrassing situation whereby a Prime Minister has to rely on the leader of the opposition to get his own policy through. It does make Boris Johnson look weak here. And I think the only sort of saving grace that the Prime Minister now has is that we're approaching the end of term in Parliament. Everyone will be going away. There'll be a short break. How festive it will be, how much gathering there'll be allowed, I think is an open question. But certainly it sort of gives everyone a bit of a breather and space for Boris Johnson to come back with more of a grip. This is what all of his MPs are saying. They're saying that Boris really needs to get a grip. I don't think there's an imminent move to remove him as Prime Minister, but there's certainly more questions over his ability to lead than there has been at any point in the last 2.5 years that he has been Prime Minister. Interestingly, he has now set himself a new mission, and this might well be the saving grace for the Prime Minister. That whole mission to get every adult in the United Kingdom a booster vaccine by the end of the year. It's a Herculean task, 3 weeks to deliver 21 million vaccinations, 7 million vaccinations a week, whereas the NHS thinks it can only do around 5 million. So how they're going to close that gap is a big, big task. And if the Prime Minister pulls it off, he will be able to claim that he has yet again got results and will quash some of that scepticism that we've been seeing. We've seen that Boris Johnson loves a 3-word 4-syllable slogan. First, it was take back control. Then it was get Brexit done. Now it's get boosted now. This is what the Prime Minister will be banging on about for the next couple of weeks. And having that big message that he's being able to deliver might well distract from some of the difficulties he's been seeing over the last few weeks.
Well, one of the major difficulties, of course, has been the ongoing row over the party. You mentioned earlier this is embarrassing for the Prime Minister. Someone feeling particularly embarrassed, Sean Bailey, after the photograph on the front page of the Mirror today. They're exclusive of his Christmas party or celebration party they had last year. Do you think we're going to see more stories like this?
It seems that Pippa Crerar, the political editor of the Daily Mirror, has a veritable anthology of all of these photographs of various Tory parties. Of course, she had the photograph of the Prime Minister on that Zoom call for that number 10 Christmas quiz, flanked by 2 members of his office over the weekend. I would be very, very reticent to say that we're not going to see any more photos like this. I think that a lot of journalists will be sitting on some things, and we may well get a bit of a drip of more events and photographs going on over the coming days and weeks. Of course, those tier 2 restrictions, when they came down in London, I think that many politicians and many people who were working in politics did not take them as seriously as much of the rest of the country had. Of course, those tier 2 restrictions allowed mixing outdoors but forbade it indoors. And I know that anecdotally, there were quite a few people working in politics who really stretched the definition of what outdoors could possibly be.
A quick word about Sir Keir Starmer. Some criticism that he could have gone for the jugular last night and pulled Labour support for this and would have landed Boris Johnson in serious trouble.
Certainly, this is a big question about long-term versus short-term tactics. Does Keir Starmer want to embarrass the Prime Minister immediately? Or does he want to set up a longer-term narrative? Of course, the next election could be 2.5, 3 years away. And so it might be more politically expedient for the leader of the opposition to try and present himself as a grown-up in the room, as someone who will do the patriotic thing by his country, as he said in his television address earlier this week. Keir Starmer trying to say, look, we are going to be standing by these restrictions. Of course, every opinion poll that we've seen over the last few weeks have said that these restrictions are broadly supported by the people of the United Kingdom. And so it's a bit of a calculation here. The Labour Party will be backing these, will be seen out there in the wider country potentially as the grown-ups in the room, as the less divided party. Of course, although I say less divided party, an independent MP, Jeremy Corbyn, of course elected as a Labour MP, was one of those vaccine passport rebels last night. So it's not all plain sailing on the opposition benches, but certainly the Labour Party much more united than the Conservative Party on this. And the play here is that will make the Labour Party seem more professional. It will make the Labour Party seem more united in general. And that may well play dividends as we approach the next election, which is still quite a few years away.
Tom Harwood, thank you very much, our political correspondent.
Well, the vaccine passport measure for England passed in the Commons last night after Labour backed the government's Plan B restrictions. Would it have not been for their support, as we've been saying, the mandate would have failed after 99 Tory MPs rebelled against it. However, the Labour vote was not unanimous, as we were just being told by Tom. 8 Labour MPs, including the former Shadow Home Secretary Diane Abbott, also voted against the measure.
Well, Pat McFadden is the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury and joins us now. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Simon just asked Tom this, but why did Keir Starmer decide we're not going to scupper the government, we'll vote with them?
The Prime Minister has squandered his authority to get necessary public health measures through by showing open contempt for the rules that he's asked the country to abide by over the past year. That's led to a sharp decline in trust in the Prime Minister among the public, which is completely understandable. And as last night showed, he's also lost the trust of his parliamentary party. Against that backdrop, we had to ask ourselves, what's the right thing to do for the British public here? And the right thing to do was to support necessary public health measures. This is not a game. This is a serious situation, and the public has every right to expect a responsible opposition, not to be calculating just what the vote is in the House of Commons, but to actually do the right thing to save lives, to protect the NHS, and to try to help the country through this pandemic. And that's exactly what Keir Starmer and the Labour Party did last night.
It's an odd argument, though, isn't it, Pat? Because you're saying that the government's lost it, Boris has lost his authority, Boris Johnson, and yet he's right on this, and he's right to the point that you are backing him.
It's not a matter of backing Boris Johnson. We understand why the public has lost trust in the Prime Minister. He's shown, as I say, complete contempt for the rules that he's asked the country to abide by. But that doesn't mean the public health situation isn't serious. So I would say to your viewers, don't think about this as trusting Boris Johnson. We understand why people wouldn't want to do that. But think about this as trusting the Chief Medical Officer, trusting the NHS, trusting the Chief Scientific Advisor, and taking this pandemic seriously. So our vote last night wasn't an expression of trust in the Prime Minister. Our vote last night was us doing the right thing for the British public. And that's what they've every right to expect from a responsible opposition, and that's what today's Labour Party is.
Some of your own MPs, though, by your own evaluation, didn't trust Professor Chris Whitty because they rebelled too.
Yeah, we had a few, but to be honest, the centre of gravity in the Labour Party was very much with the public health measures last night. There were a small number, but you could see the vast bulk of Labour MPs voted to support the measures last night.
Just wondering what the mood is in the party. Is there a sense that it's wise to play the long game? That's clearly what Sir Keir Starmer is doing. Or that yes, last night in many ways was an open goal for the Labour Party and they didn't try and score?
It's not a game. It's not an open goal. That's not the way to think about this. The Conservative Party has collapsed into dysfunctionality. What we saw last night was, despite the government having a majority of 80 on paper, they couldn't even get necessary public health measures through the House of Commons, measures advised by the Chief Medical Officer, by the Chief Scientific Officer. They couldn't even get them through Parliament. Our duty, faced with a situation like that, isn't to play games and think about open goals. Our duty is to do the right thing by the British public. We now know that the public can't rely on the Conservative Party to do the right thing, but no matter how dysfunctional the Conservative Party is, it's important that the country understands they can still rely on us, and our actions last night showed that to be the case.
You think the actions that you voted for yesterday are enough to protect the public?
Well, we can't know that for sure because this is a fast-moving situation. This new variant has only been known about for a few weeks. What do we know? We know that it's spreading very fast. It looks like being triple vaccinated is the best protection against it. So we would encourage everybody to get their third jab. If you've not jabbed at all, start the process and get vaccinated. That's the best protection of all, but certainly we view these measures as necessary in the fight against the new variant that we've seen and the ongoing pandemic situation.
If I could just briefly talk to you about something else. The cost of living is something that many people are concerned with at the moment. Energy bills as they are. It's something I know the Labour Party's looked at. And you're promising to cut VAT on energy bills. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. We've just had new inflation figures published today at 5.1%, way ahead of expectations, way ahead of anything that we've seen in recent years. If you take energy bills specifically, we published figures today showing that they particularly affect pensioners who tend to spend more time at home and tend to live in draftier houses. Pensioners spend more per head per week than the population on average, and we've called on the government to cut VAT on fuel bills for the next 6 months. It's more than affordable because the truth is that inflation and rising prices has meant that the government's VAT receipts are running way ahead of expectations. This would be a real measure that the government could institute now with no form filling, no bureaucracy, that would get help to people as we enter the coldest period of the winter. And the inflation figures published this morning show that the cost of living crisis facing families across the country is biting deeper.
Pat McFadden, really grateful for your time this morning. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Joining us now and listening to that conversation is John McTernan, who's a political strategist who was the political advisor to the Labour Party and the director of political operations for Tony Blair when he was Prime Minister. Thank you very much for joining us. Boris Johnson, it seems, can't persuade his own party. So how's he going to be able to persuade the public?
Well, Boris Johnson, as Pat McFadden pointed out, can do the right thing on public health with the support of the Labour Party. And it's a mark of the change to the Labour Party. The former leader, Jeremy Corbyn, wants health workers to be able to infect patients with COVID, but this government can rely on Keir Starmer with the Labour Party so they can do the right thing, follow the medical advice, put the public first, put public health first, and not have to worry about the politics of the Tory backbenchers. And I think that's a striking thing now. We see, as Danny Finkelstein has said in the Times this morning, we see a Prime Minister who doesn't have the confidence of his own backbenchers on the dominant issue of our time, the pandemic. And so Boris Johnson governs and is able to do the right thing. The government can do the right thing with the support of the Labour Party. So what we have is a coalition government like we had in the Second World War when Clement Attlee and Winston Churchill came together. So maybe Boris is Churchill, but in a different way than he inspected.
It's ironic, isn't it? I mean, because what you're basically saying is Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour Party, thinks Boris Johnson's absolutely right in what he's doing.
No, we think that Chris Whitty is right, and we think that there's something extraordinary.
Because this is a political decision, John.
It's not. It's a public health decision. Those are public health measures we voted on yesterday, public health measures to reduce the transmission of Omicron and to reduce the death toll in the UK. If the Tory backbenchers genuinely believe they know more about public health than the NHS chief executive, than the chief medical advisor to the government, they need their heads felt.
If this new strain does surge in the way it may have anticipated, have the Labour Party put themselves in a little bit of a bind here where they're not going to be able to criticise the Conservatives for doing more, for instilling more measures, because they've said, OK, we think this is appropriate, this is right?
We think this is right for now. This is the advice we've received. If these, we're 10 days from Christmas, aren't we? This variant appears to double every 2 days. So it looks likely we'll need more measures before Christmas. It looks likely there'll be more serious measures before Christmas. In the event that has to happen, obviously the Labour Party will take the briefing from the NHS, take the briefing from the chief medical advisors to the government, and then we'll do the right thing to protect people. That's what we're trying to do. And what is really, really odd is to see the Prime Minister and his cabinet, his Secretary of State for Health, the whole cabinet, unable to rally their own backbenchers to protect the health of the public. That is the first basic duty of government, is to protect the country. And that can only be done now with the support of the Labour Party. Very much changed days for the Prime Minister.
I mean, you're a strategist, John. I mean, if you were wargaming this now, what's the timetable in terms of Boris Johnson and his leadership? Is there a calculation here that back him now, allow him, if you like, to tie the rope around his own neck with his backbenchers, and then let him do the damage to himself and then leap in? Is that what the Labour Party is going to do?
No, look, I think the thing about the Labour Party is everybody in the Labour Party understands that the defeat at the last election was because having Jeremy Corbyn as leader was showing that we had turned our back on the country, turned our back on the public. We have a long, long route back to credibility as a political party. And the core of credibility as a political party is doing the right thing. The calculation of party benefit is not the right thing in a global pandemic where hundreds and thousands of people are dying in the UK and where hundreds and thousands of people, millions of people are dying across the world. We have to do the right thing to get the public health situation correct. Does this damage Boris Johnson? Yes, he's lost authority. He can't govern without the Labour Party's support. His backbenchers don't trust him. They don't trust the science. They just believe in what they say to each other on WhatsApp groups. But the Labour Party isn't doing this because it makes the Labour Party look better and makes Boris Johnson look worse. The Labour Party is doing it because this is the right thing to do. It's what the public want as well. What the science says is what the public want, is what the NHS advises. In those circumstances, playing politics with it is what the Tory backbenchers are doing. They're wreaking a revenge on the Prime Minister for all kinds of things. He's lost authority, as Pat McFadden said, lost authority because he held parties in Number 10 last year against the rules that he had set. He lost authority in that way. He's lost authority politically because he can't get his party to accept he won the majority, but now they're playing about doing what they want to do. So he's now drifting. What we need is a direction that gets us through this, first through the pandemic, and then actually to address the cost of living crisis. We're turning, in the next couple of years, the end of the next couple of years, by the next election, the average household will have taxes increased by £3,000 a year. Now, those are real pressures which will lead us to have a real choice in the next election. And the thing is, in political strategy, it's always best not to have to be calculating. The best thing ever is that doing the right thing gives you the reward from the public and the voters that you're seeking. And I think this is a turning point. It's been a turning point for Keir Starmer, turning point for Wes Streeting in the great speech he made yesterday, a turning point for the government and for Boris Johnson, a man who thought he could get away with everything because he got out of every bind, because the voters just seem to go, yeah, well, that's who he is. Boris is Boris. And now people are saying, yeah, Boris is Boris. And there's a worrying tone in that. So we have to get the country through the pandemic. We have to deal with the economic issue, the cost of living crisis. We have to rebuild our economy. And every day, every week, every month, the Labour Party's actions, putting the public interest first, not party interest, is saying to the public, Labour's back, give Labour a look. And I think, that's the right thing for us.
John, thank you very much for your time. That's John McTinnan there. And just to confirm what Pat McFadden was saying about the cost of living, it surged by 5.1% in the 12 months to November. That figure just coming in. It's up from 4.2% the month before. That's the highest rise now for 10 years, not since September 2011. Have we seen a cost of living surge like that?
Let's bring you a little bit of positive news. Coming up on the programme, all countries on the government's red list are going to be taken off. There are still a few rules in place. We'll take you through how it all changes after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Some brighter skies about first thing this morning, and a better chance, I think, in the north and the east of some sunshine by the afternoon. Otherwise, largely cloudy skies with some rain, mostly associated with this weather front, which is currently sinking south across Scotland, pushing into Northern Ireland, parts of northern England as well. Meanwhile, high pressure over the continent extends its influence across southern parts of the UK. That is going to bring a return to more widespread settled weather through the next few days, but for the time being, it's introducing a lot of cloud cover. Cloudy skies for the south of England, parts of mid and south Wales. Also this cloudier zone associated with the weather front that's sinking south, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England. But a good chance elsewhere of sunny skies once any early fog lifts. And temperatures again above average for the time of year, 11 to 13 Celsius, a mild afternoon to come. Now, this area of cloud and outbreaks of light rain and drizzle pushes north again, clearing from Northern Ireland as well as northern England during Wednesday evening and moving through the rest of Scotland. There'll also be a lot of cloud, some cloud covering hills across Wales and the southwest, southern England as well. But clear spells in between for southern Scotland, parts of northern and eastern England will lead to a chilly start tomorrow morning and a few fog patches first thing as well. But on the whole, it's a grey start for many. A lot of cloud, particularly in the south and the west, and this area of rain moving through the far north of Scotland during the morning. After lunch, I think that rain clears, and then for the vast majority, it's actually looking dry tomorrow afternoon. A lot of cloud on the map, but there will be some sunshine, particularly in eastern parts of England and Scotland, and temperatures are trending downwards, so that it's turning colder later this week. But high pressure extends across the UK during Thursday, Friday and into the weekend. That will lead to a lot of settled weather, still a lot of cloud, particularly in the west, and also turning colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Welcome back to the programme. It is 7:30 here on the Great British Breakfast. Now, 60 years ago, Adolf Eichmann was sentenced to death for crimes against humanity after a trial in Jerusalem. He was responsible for organising the logistics of the mass deportation of Jews to extermination camps. His trial was famous for exposing the evil amongst the Nazis. Today, survivors and experts say his trial was a turning point in the telling of the Holocaust.
Well, Chief Executive of Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, Olivia Waldman, joins us now. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
That trial and the images of it, and for those of us of a certain age, it was the moment where we first perhaps understood the horrors that he had overseen.
That's absolutely right. 60 years ago, 1961, the trial took place, and for the first time, a trial was televised. So it meant that it reached a global audience, and people really started learning about the horrors of the Holocaust. Now, you might ask, well, why didn't they know already? Well, of course, there was a certain amount known in the immediate aftermath of the war, but significantly, people didn't really talk about it. Survivors didn't really talk about what had happened. They were trying to rebuild their lives. They were trying to move on from the unimaginable traumas they had experienced. But even if they had tried to talk about it, in the years after the war, people didn't really want to know. They didn't really want to listen. They were trying to rebuild a world after such a world war. And it wasn't until this trial of Eichmann that survivors started speaking and the world started listening.
Why do you think that was? Was it just this sort of combination of horror, shame?
I think there are many reasons. I think survivors felt a real need to try and rebuild their devastated lives, try to focus on rebuilding physically. They needed to restore their health. They had to rebuild a life. They tried to rebuild families, recreate families, because this was in the experience of absence and loss on a huge scale. 6 million Jews had been murdered, and those who had survived tried to recreate their families. For the rest of the world, they were trying to move on and to restore some kind of sense of a civilized society. But this trial of Eichmann really brought to the fore the detail of what had happened. Survivors started outlining their experiences and people started listening to them. And I think we take a lot of that for granted now. We're in a world in 2021 where Holocaust Memorial Day events happen all across the UK every year in January, where children at school have the Holocaust on the curriculum, where some survivors, still we have some survivors with us who are able and willing to share their experiences. And maybe we take a little bit of that for granted. This anniversary is reminding us that we shouldn't be complacent about the wealth of information that we have available to us.
Olivia, 60 years ago since that trial, as you say, the numbers of survivors are fewer and fewer by the day. When we lose the last of them, how will we continue to remember? Because time has a habit, doesn't it, of sort of erasing history as much as we try and remember it.
Such a good question, Simon. But we at the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust see tens of thousands of events, well, certainly pre-pandemic. Now there are events taking place online, taking place all across the country. Not all of them have survivors physically with them, but survivors' testimony is still at the heart of so many of those events, partly because of the work of my team at the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust. There are artefacts providing evidence of what happened in museums such as the Imperial War Museum, which has recently opened its new Holocaust galleries, museums around the country, in Huddersfield, in Newark, and so on. So I'm confident that as the world moves on, we will still have those opportunities to learn the truth of what happened in the past. And we certainly know that people are still engaged with this and want to learn, want to mark Holocaust Memorial Day, want to come together to learn from genocide and do what they can to make a better future. And that's what we see every year in January at Holocaust Memorial Day.
Olivia, it's really good to talk to you. Olivia Marx Waldman, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Now it's 25 minutes to 8. Coming up here on the programme, all countries on the government red list will now be taken off. No more hotel quarantine, but there are still testing rules in place. We'll take you through the regulations after a short break.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
We've just been having a... all right, should we... I think we should go... These COVID passes...
Should we recreate what happened?
Yeah, go on.
I said, I really want us to talk a bit more about these COVID passes that have come into force in England. I spent about 20 minutes yesterday trying to work out how to download it.
And I said, all the kids are just sending their QR codes with a pass on WhatsApp to one another.
You said a bit more angrily.
There were some other words.
Oh, my God.
You know, everybody's... They're away... Anyway. Let us know.
Have you got your pass?
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And did you just WhatsApp a QR code to someone else? Let's hope that doesn't happen. Quickly, we're going to talk about other regulations when it comes to coronavirus, because all countries have been removed from the government's international red list because The variant, Omicron, is just running rampant in the UK. Sajid Javid has said the change has been made because there is domestic community transmission of the variant and it's spreading widely across the world. Temporary testing measures for everyone arriving in the UK will remain, but travellers can leave hotel quarantine early.
OK, travel editor at The Independent, the one, the only, Simon Calder, is joining us now from Gatwick Airport. Where else, Simon? Don't want to keep you too long. I know you're in a hurry. At last.
Well, it is absolute chaos here, actually, Simon, because although we heard yesterday that hotel quarantine was ending and that people who were in hotel quarantine would be able to leave at 4 a.m., I've been here since early morning and there has been a steady stream of people leaving. But now the guards are saying you cannot leave. You absolutely couldn't make it up. On Monday, when we'd had lots of leaks to friendly newspapers that this was going to happen, I said to the Department of Health and the Department of Transport, OK, you've got thousands of people in hotel quarantine. What's going to happen to them? And I was ignored. Yesterday in the Commons, MPs were saying to the Health Secretary, what happens to all the people who are already there? And he didn't know. Later on, the Cabinet Office Minister, Steve Barclay, was sent to the Commons to say, yep, we're going to spring everybody, but they apparently need some legislation. During the night, and I'm just a couple of hundred yards here from this Sofitel, one of the quarantine hotels, I've been speaking to some of the people as they've come out. They were given a letter saying, oh, yeah, we haven't quite done the paperwork. Can you hang around till lunchtime, please? People have been walking out. The security guards are sort of making half-hearted efforts to keep them there. But I'm afraid it brings to an end another story of utter chaos perpetrated. Well, they are saying, you know, it was clear a week ago this was completely pointless. We were here to stop Omicron spreading. Well, we haven't. So why didn't they just let us out early?
Legally, what are the people's rights who are stuck in hotel quarantine? Can they just leave?
No, they can't, Rosie, because unfortunately, the law doesn't exist to allow them. Now, I've spoken to a number of people. Effectively, the attitude from the people I've been speaking to is, you know, come and get me then if you really want to keep me here. But also the Labour MP Ben Bradshaw has just told me that he completely understands people walking out because, of course, well, he said the government hasn't shown complete compliance with the law in, for example, Christmas parties. So he's making it a bit party political. But the attitude is just absolute fury. I mean, the car park here is still full of people allowed to go out on their walks. They realise that there is exactly no point in them being there. The next question, of course, is, well, what happens with the people who are checking out early? Do they get their money back? And that, I'm afraid, along with so much else, is not yet clear. I am asking the questions, but meanwhile, the chaos continues. All I can report is that Gatwick Airport is pretty lively this morning. It looks as though a lot of people are ignoring the spread of Omicron and thinking we're going on our holidays anyway.
Oh, this is so depressing, isn't it? And what we're seeing is a classic sense of left hand and right hand not knowing what the other's up to.
Well, no, neither hand knew what was going on, so I don't think that's fair. I mean, this is sort of being managed or not by the Department for Transport and also by the Department of Health. I did alert them to this issue, as I say, and they chose not to act on it. And now, well, they're struggling to catch up. And meanwhile, the whole thing is unravelling in an extremely embarrassing way.
Just very quickly, Simon, though, you must be pleased, though, for people who are planning to go to South Africa, let's say, for Christmas, they now don't have that hefty bill and that isolation when they return.
Oh no, I mean, and it's just absolutely tragic. Some of the stories I've been hearing, talking to a grandmother who came back to see her her new granddaughters, hasn't been able to see those. But yes, we are going to rescue something from the winter. But of course, nobody knows at this stage what the government is going to come up with next in terms of travel restrictions, because they seem to bear very little resemblance to actual what's happening in the world. So frankly, I'm as lost as you are for what the next decision is going to be. But for now, if you want to go to South Africa, I would urge you to go and get some sunshine, enjoy the outdoor lifestyle, and you'll be a lot safer there than here.
Yeah, very quickly. I mean, you've spoken to everybody. Where does the buck stop? Is it health? Is it transport? Whose decision is it?
Well, ultimately, I think it is the Department of Health. They were the ones who said, yeah, everybody out, this is completely pointless. The Health Secretary's actually been saying that for about the last week. And unfortunately, they didn't actually get all their ducks in a row. Health, the Transport Select Committee is interviewing the Aviation Minister from 9:30. So I shall be watching that from Gatwick with great interest.
Simon, thank you very much for that update on the continuing chaos. Simon Calder there at Gatwick.
It's coming up to 7:45. Inflation in the UK has hit its highest level in 10 years ahead of the Bank of England's Crunch monetary policy meeting on Thursday. The Consumer Price Index rose by 5.1% in the 12 months to November. That's up from 4.2% in October, which was in itself the steepest incline for a decade and more than double the central bank's target. The Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee meets tomorrow to decide whether to rise interest rates.
Well, the unemployment rate is falling as job vacancies hit a record high. A reopened economy and a race to hire staff means there are now 1.22 million job vacancies. That's 430,000 more than pre-pandemic levels. Part-time work has seen the biggest increase in numbers following a sharp fall during the pandemic. More young people aged 16 to 24 are also finding themselves in employment than before. But with working from home and new Omicron restrictions hurting the hospitality industry, is this situation likely to change in the new year?
David Freeman is the Office of National Statistics, Head of Labour Market Statistics, and joins us now. Were you expecting a number quite that high, 5.1%?
Well, this is just a figure that's just come out. I mean, if you look at what's been happening in the economy, I mean, the figure's really driven by increases in petrol prices, second-hand cars. So it's been coming in, and you've seen inflation going up over a number of periods. So it is high. And again, if you look at what's happening with wages, which you published yesterday, although in October wages were increasing above the rate of inflation by about 1.7%, having higher inflation, if all things being equal, it may be that actually wages are going to start going either at or slightly below inflation over the next few months.
David, job vacancies rising, a surge in part-time workers. There was a time where that was just good news. Is it not?
Well, I think it's a bit of a mixed picture. That it's very good news for the people who are in employment, getting new jobs. And again, number of people on payrolls at a record high, job vacancies at a record high. But I think it's interesting to see what's actually going on under the surface and what is being causing this. I mean, probably three things I wanted to pick up. Firstly, the furlough scheme, which was in place over the pandemic period, that kept a lot of people on payrolls in employment, even though they couldn't go to work. And the majority of those have gone back into employment as the furlough scheme ended. We've also seen a record number of job-to-job moves, so people changing careers, changing jobs, and so they leave a vacancy behind them. The third thing we've seen is actually a group of people moving themselves out of the labour market. So it's a group of people called economically inactive. So these are people, they're not working, they're not actively seeking work, so they count as unemployed. So they're either are being students, they've got long-term sick, looking after family or home, or early retirement. And we've seen a big group of people move that. We saw a big group of people move into this category at the start of the pandemic as jobs numbers fell. However, there's a lot of people in perhaps the 50-plus category who have moved out of the job market, potentially mostly taking early retirement, and that's partly creating the job shortages that we're seeing at the moment.
Isn't it? It means Prince Harry was right. If you're not happy in your job, get out.
Well, as you say, there's a lot of job vacancies out there. If you look at the number of unemployed people per job vacancy, that's at 1.2, and that's the lowest we've seen since we started publishing these figures 20 years ago. So there is a lot of job vacancies out there, although we have been talking to businesses, particularly those who are struggling to fill their vacancies, about, well, why are you struggling to fill them? And actually the biggest reason is lack of suitable applicants. So actually lack of applicants overall, about half of people struggling to fill their vacancies say that is, and actually most of them say it's because they haven't got suitable qualifications. So while there's a lot of jobs out there, there's not necessarily, there might be a bit of a skills mismatch between the people who are eligible looking for the jobs and the jobs that are actually available.
Yeah, the old chicken and egg. David, it's really good to see you. David Freeman from the ONS. Thank you for your time this morning.
Now, it's coming up at 7:50. We're going to be looking at, well, I've been told to say how to keep your drives safe, but it's your drives home rather than the front of your house where you might park your car. But when you're driving, how can you stay safe? That's after this.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Some brighter skies about first thing this morning and a better chance, I think, in the north and the east of some sunshine by the afternoon. Otherwise, largely cloudy skies with some rain, mostly associated with this weather front, which is currently sinking south across Scotland, pushing into Northern Ireland, parts of northern England as well. Meanwhile, high pressure over the continent extends its influence across southern parts of the UK. That is going to bring a return to more widespread settled weather through the next few days, but for the time being, it's introducing a lot of cloud cover. Cloudy skies for the south of England, parts of mid and south Wales. Also this cloudier zone associated with a weather front that's sinking south, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England. But a good chance elsewhere of sunny skies once any early fog lifts. And temperatures again above average for the time of year, 11 to 13 Celsius, a mild afternoon to come. Now, this area of cloud and outbreaks of light rain and drizzle pushes north again, clearing from Northern Ireland as well as northern England during Wednesday evening and moving through the rest of Scotland. There'll also be a lot of cloud, some cloud covering hills across Wales and the southwest, southern England as well. But clear spells in between for southern Scotland, parts of northern and eastern England will lead to a chilly start tomorrow morning and a few fog patches first thing as well. But on the whole, it's a grey start for many. A lot of cloud, particularly in the south and the west, and this area of rain moving through the far north of Scotland during the morning. After lunch, I think that rain clears, and then for the vast majority, it's actually looking dry tomorrow afternoon. A lot of cloud on the map, but there will be some sunshine, particularly in eastern parts of England and Scotland, and temperatures are trending downwards, so that it's turning colder later this week. But high pressure extends across the UK during Thursday, Friday and into the weekend. That will lead to a lot of settled weather, still a lot of cloud, particularly in the west, and also turning colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to the programme. 8 minutes to 8. We're still battling with the NHS app and a little bit of face recognition, but more on that to come after 8 o'clock. Let's talk about our Christmas holidays. With 80% of us planning a long car journey. Where are we going? Well, I'm staying in London, right, which seems to be sort of epicentre of Omicron, so just desperately trying 10 days to hold on to not get a positive test.
It's going to be a lonely Christmas.
Yes, well, if you're in a car, you better check that, maybe take a lateral flow test with all your passengers before you get in the car journey. But This winter, more than 50% of us are travelling to see friends and family, and many of us will do that on the road. The 23rd of December is set to be one of the busiest days, rather than Christmas Eve, which was predicted to be the busiest this time last year. Well, the research from What 3 Words suggests that also we prioritise water and snacks over breakdown kits. Does that surprise you? I would be thinking about snacks probably rather than my sort of spare tyre when preparing for these long journeys.
Let's talk to Edmund King, president of the AA, joins us this morning. Edmund, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Simon and Rosie.
So here we go, the Christmas rush. We do this every year. You and I have done this every year for, well, like, I've lost count of the decades. But that's interesting, that the people, cars are now so reliable, we don't think about what might go wrong anymore, do we?
Yeah, I think that's right. People take the car for granted. They look forward to their Christmas holiday. And I think in particular this year, because last year there were fewer people travelling because of the restrictions. And people almost treat their car like a second home. They just jump into the car and drive off. And yet, even with modern cars, there are lots of simple things that can go wrong and can cause you to break down. So, you know, basic things like checking your tyre pressure, checking the thread on your tyres, checking your levels, your oil level, your windscreen wiper level, all of those things are simple things that help to prevent a breakdown. And what we also say to people is, you know, prepare your car, but prepare yourself. And if you are going to break down, what we find at the AA, something like 40% of people don't really know where they are when they break down. Now, that might sound odd, but they'll say things like, well, I'm in the Lake District, I'm on the A6, I passed a quarry, I'm quite near Kendal. Now, that's quite difficult for us to find someone there, particularly quickly, particularly if they've had a crash. And this is where we're advising people to download this free app called What 3 Words, because what that does, it's quite ingenious. It breaks up the world into 57 trillion 3-meter squares. And wherever you are, if you've got the app, you just turn it on and it gives you 3 words. So for that person broken down in the Lake District, the 3 words would be stall, squeaking, fended. And if they phone us up and give us those 3 words, we can pinpoint exactly where they are, which is a lay-by off the A6. It really is ingenious.
I have to say, I'm definitely someone who would be guilty of preparing the snacks I was going to have for my long journey rather than a breakdown kit. I don't truthfully even really know what would be in a breakdown kit, so re-educate me, please.
Well, yeah, firstly, I would say that actually having some snacks is quite a good thing because, you know, we have found people in the past, okay, the weather's very mild at the moment, but in the past, I remember one occasion, I probably spoke to Simon about it at the time, on the M11 when it was shut down overnight because of snow and people were stuck in those conditions for about 11 hours. So it was actually really useful if people did have snacks, you know, having some water, having some high energy bars and stuff like that. But I think also the broader point, just for your car, there are some basic things, like even simple things like having a torch, even having an atlas, you know, despite sat-navs and everything else, you know, sometimes when a road is closed and you've got to divert and your sat-nav keeps re-diverting you back to the road that's closed, having an atlas, you can plan another journey. So sometimes just some basic things like that in the car can actually help you, you know, should you break down on one of those journeys. And we're predicting, as you said at the start, probably about 16 million drivers will be taken to the roads on Thursday and slightly fewer on Friday. Also, this Saturday is going to be the biggest day for shopping, so there'll be lots of people going out there. So really what we're saying is be prepared and make the most of your holiday.
Did you say it was stall, squeaking and fender?
Fended, yes.
Right, that would explain it, because I put in fender and I'm 50 miles west of Samoa in the South Pacific. Oh, Oh, there you are. He's obviously gone off somewhere else as well. Anyway,
Honestly,
it's very important you get those 3 words right.
I wish we could show you.
Got this map of Samoa and the middle of the sea. Not the Lake District at all, but I misheard him. Anyway.
I don't think the AA would be able to pick you up from there. Something would have gone rather wrong if that was the case.
You'd have to be swimming, too. Right. Anyway, that was Edmund King. Sorry, we won't be able to get him back, but the message is quite clear. Prepare the car, prepare you.
And that snacks should be part of your breakdown kit. Now, the Queen is going to host her annual... Sorry. Do you want to... The Queen's going to host her annual royal family Christmas lunch this Tuesday, apparently, despite fears over the Omicron COVID variant. Her Majesty will host around 50 relatives at Windsor Castle, sources say. The monarch's plans to host Christmas Day at Sandringham are also reported to go ahead. This is according to The Sun. They've said there's no way, a source said, that the Queen wants to let anything get in the way of a family event like this, particularly with the year she's had. Yeah, it'll be the Queen's first Christmas without her husband, of course, Prince Philip, who died earlier this year. It's unlikely that Prince Harry will be there either. So the Queen won't be driving home for Christmas, but it sounds like people will be driving to come and see her. 50 people is quite a lot. Do you think the Queen asked people to do a lateral flow test before they come round for dinner? I think Windsor Castle's big enough to say, you can go and sit over there, 2 miles away at the end of the table. Yeah. Maybe, yes. I mean, one of the biggest challenges everyone's got is getting hold of PCR tests and lateral flow tests. So I wonder if you managed to get some yesterday. Some of those pharmacies are now putting up signs, like we saw with petrol at the forecourt, saying, no lateral flow tests here. Yeah. Not ideal. We've got a tiny few seconds to regain some composure. Pushing it. See you in a minute. Very good morning to you. It is 8 o'clock on Wednesday, the 15th of December. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast with Simon McCoy and Rosie Wright. Now, adults in England must now show a COVID pass to enter large venues, despite nearly 100 Conservative MPs voting against the government's plans, with one senior Tory warning a leadership challenge has got to be on the cards. Well, do you think it's time for the Prime Minister to go? Let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Omicron threatens Christmas. England's Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty warns a big increase in hospitalisations is on the way. But with the government eyeing more restrictions, do you think the threat from the new variant has perhaps been overblown? Calls are growing for the UK's social services systems to be overhauled after the murder of another child let down by the system, 16-month-old Star Hobson. Authorities missed 5 opportunities to save the little girl. So, with so many red flags missed, is it time for reform? Another blow to the economy in the run-up to Christmas. The latest inflation figures show the cost of living is at its highest rate for more than a decade. What does that mean for your family's finances? Good news if you're expecting international visitors this Christmas. The travel red list is scrapped with all 11 countries removed. That means no more quarantine hotels, but restrictive testing rules still remain in place. But at least the Queen's keeping calm and carrying on as Omicron fears engulf the country. Her Majesty is still planning to hold her annual family Christmas party. Well, welcome back to the programme. Now, as we've been hearing, COVID passes. They're going to be introduced in England from today after the measure passed in a vote in the House of Commons yesterday. And of course, Boris Johnson was reliant on Labour support. 99 Conservatives voted against the government. That's the biggest revolt against Boris Johnson since he became Prime Minister. 38 Tories also voted against a mask-wearing mandate. 63 opposed compulsory vaccinations for NHS frontline workers. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said the Tory rebellion confirms that Boris is too weak to discharge the basic functions of government. Well, meanwhile, the Conservatives' former London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey has resigned as chair of a police and crime committee over an illegal gathering organised by his team last year during Tier 2 restrictions. Well, let's unpack all of this. Tom Harwood joins us now, our political correspondent. Tom, a very good morning to you. We were anticipating yesterday there would be a significant Conservative rebellion, but not nearly 100 MPs.
No, the numbers being floated around yesterday seemed to be in the sort of high 70s mark. The organisers of this rebellion were saying that actually over the course of yesterday, the government was determined to pick off rebels. And what appears to have happened is actually the rebel total was added to rather than reduced. Almost 100 rebels from the Conservative Party rebelling against the direct diktat of not only the Prime Minister, but also all of the people that the Prime Minister recruited to try and persuade Conservative MPs. Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer, was in Parliament yesterday giving briefings to Tory MPs, trying to convince them to back the government's path. And Boris Johnson was personally phoning round rebels to try and bring them on side, where it looked like those attempts completely failed last night. 99 rebels, the largest rebellion of Boris Johnson's premiership, but also a number that sort of sounds familiar only to those who are scarred of the sort of dealings of Brexit, those enormous rebellions that Theresa May suffered in her final days and weeks and months as Prime Minister. This is the real scale of what we're seeing now. And I think it speaks to a broader sense of frustration, really, on the Conservative benches, frustration in the direction that the government is going, on its lack of relative achievements 2.5 years into Boris Johnson being Prime Minister, but also in terms of saying that really much of the Conservative Party has had enough of the restrictions surrounding this pandemic. And it appears like we're approaching a bit of an endgame when it comes to pandemic policy.
Well, does it, though? Because you've got Labour saying that they're backing Boris Johnson, that actually he's right on this, that public health is the priority, and that's why they're backing him. Won't the focus eventually be these rebels and what on earth they're up to?
Well, I think that certainly it does feel like we're approaching a bit of an end game in terms of the whole context of COVID right now. If we're to believe some of the estimates pinging around this week, 200,000 infections earlier this week, potentially 300,000 or 400,000 infections today, really, we're going to rip through the entire population of the country really rather rapidly. And it seems that actually some of the arguments that the Conservative rebels were making last night, that this is sort of closing the door after the horse has bolted, that these are measures that are going to be entirely ineffectual, that haven't worked in Scotland, that haven't worked in Wales, where cases are also spiking up. It seems that some of these measures are not particularly well suited to Omicron, the most vaccine-avoiding variant yet discovered. It seems that really we're approaching a moment now where many, many people, potentially more people than have ever been infected before at one time, will be infected by this variant across the country. And there is a limit to what the government can do to stop that.
I just wonder, Tom, if Boris Johnson can't persuade his own party, how's he going to persuade the public?
It's a tough question, and this is something that Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, has been alighting on as well, particularly in his televised address to the public earlier this week. The Labour Party is seeing this as an opportunity to look more in control, more prime ministerial and less divided than Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party. Although it has to be said, there was a 1922 committee meeting last night, a meeting of those backbench MPs, all those MPs within the Conservative Party, where they listened to Boris Johnson. He walked in and they were thumping their hands on the table, giving approval to the Prime Minister, sort of tub-thumping approval, trying to make an outward display of unity, even though inside it's very clear that the cracks are beginning to form. I think that there is a potential to read too much into this rebellion in terms of the wider position of the Prime Minister. Many of those rebels feel like they have a bit of an affinity towards Boris Johnson, think he's got it wrong on these measures, but don't want to see him dislodged as Prime Minister. I think that that is getting a bit of ahead of ourselves if we're talking about potential leadership contests. I know that many newspapers have reported that there have been some letters going into the 1922 committee, that mechanism by which you can dislodge a leader of the Conservative Party. I think that there certainly have been some going in, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere close to the threshold that actually takes us into a leadership contest.
Tom, thank you very much. Good to talk to you this morning. Now let's talk to Andrew Pearce, consultant editor at the Daily Mail. Is here now. Good morning. Nice to see you.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
So Boris Johnson this morning, how's he going to be feeling?
Pretty shocked, actually.
I was in the House yesterday and I was talking to a lot of the rebels. I thought probably 60 to 70, 100. Yeah. It's the second biggest rebellion against a Tory Prime Minister since the war. That's the scale of this. The only other one who got it was worse for was Theresa May with her disastrous Brexit deal. There's the irony. Just 2 years ago, he was walking on water, the Prime Minister. He's surrendered huge authority with his backbenchers and ministers as well, let's be honest, because of the botched handling of the Owen Paterson affair. Let's go back to that. Just a couple of weeks ago, Owen Paterson had broken the rules. Everybody knew he'd broken the rules on how you lobby commercial companies, how you lobby ministers. The Prime Minister decided to try and change the rules to protect this man because he felt sorry for him because his wife had killed herself. We all feel sorry for him because of that, but he'd broken the rules. And all these backbenchers voted for this botched deal, and then the next day, the Prime Minister, like the Grand Old Duke of York, marched him up the hill and down again. He's surrendered huge authority. The whip's power to enforce discipline has been badly damaged by that affair.
And more than that, he may well pay a price in the by-election.
Sure, I think it's a big problem for them. It's one of the Tories' safest seats, 23,000 majority, and it's touch and go. They might scrape home, but it will be really very, very close.
The person who actually wielded the most power yesterday was Sir Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
He could have said, right, that's it, we'll skewer the party, but didn't do that. Is this the long game?
Yeah, because, look, you can't be seen as a proper grown-up opposition to be playing politics with the pandemic. And the view in the Labour Party is that we should have gone into Plan B months ago, weeks ago. Now, I actually have got a lot of sympathy with the Tory rebels because I just don't see the point of it. I think we're overreacting to Omicron. We've just seen research coming out of South Africa yesterday which suggests that you're less likely to go to hospital with Omicron than you were with the Delta variant. But this was a wake-up call to the Prime Minister. This is a man who's lost so much authority and he's going to struggle now to get it back.
It's interesting you said go back to Owen Paterson. You didn't mention parties. People are sick and tired of... Well, people are sick and tired of parties.
They are.
And the Prime Minister could turn around and say, well, actually, I wasn't sure of the rules myself. And people would perhaps understand that.
Yeah.
And say, well, let's move on.
Yeah.
But why is the media so obsessed with parties?
Well, because the way that ministers were wheeled out for, was it 2 weeks to say there were no parties, or they were within the rules.
So it's the cover-up rather than the event.
It's always the cover-up. 'Twas ever thus. Tell the truth. Be honest. There is an issue with the Prime Minister, who I like, but there is an issue with the Prime Minister and the truth. This is proved again and again. All he had to say when this party was planted on the front page of the Daily Mirror, a Labour Party supporting paper, is, I've checked my diary, I certainly wasn't there. If there was one, I'll find out. All you have to do, kicked it into touch. Cabinet ministers going out to say it's not true. They're furious with him because they've been told by Downing Street, say this, when it wasn't true. And we'll get the inquiry probably, the Cabinet Office inquiry will be Friday, we think we'll get the answer, conveniently the day after the by-election. So if he loses the by-election and then the Cabinet Office inquiry says he knew, he's in even more trouble.
Do you think journalists should have sat on the story for so long?
About the party?
The party, the parties?
Look, I don't think the Mirror sat on that story. I think as soon as they got it, they put it in the paper. Somebody with an agenda against Boris Johnson sat on that story for a very long time. Now, who was it? We'd love to know. Was it Dominic Cummings, who was his chief advisor, who's wreaked a lot of damage on Boris since he's left Number 10, or somebody else? Somebody with a political agenda did that. Maybe it went to the Labour Party. But the timing has been devastating because here we are in Christmas, facing all these restrictions, and they were breaking the rules.
The irony is people are wanting some stability, they want to be calm. We're in a moment, none of us has been through a pandemic before, we're still in the thick of this. There is still a lot of goodwill towards any Prime Minister who's dealing under pressure like this. And the danger is that he's beginning to lose that goodwill.
Yeah, and I think people cut the Prime Minister a lot of slack. I think mistakes probably were made with how quickly we did or didn't go into lockdown. But equally, I defend him on that because what Conservative Prime Minister wants to shut down an economy and put potentially millions of people out of a job? So I think he did his best. They made mistakes, but they did the best they can. But they are now making bad mistakes, and this cavalier attitude to parties when everybody else is following the rules. We know the day of the so-called Downing Street party, which isn't official yet. I think it's now called a gathering in number 10, apparently. 3 people were fined for having parties. You can be fined up to £10,000. They criminalised it. This government decided to criminalise it.
That's the problem.
If you break, they made it a law-breaking offence. So if they broke the law should be applied to them.
Good to see you in here.
Very nice to be here.
Oh.
Nice to see you again, Simon. I've known Simon for a very long time, actually.
Thank you very much.
That'll do. See you later. Thanks, Andrew.
Well, we've been talking about the restrictions that MPs were voting or rebelling on yesterday, but from today, you'll have to show the NHS COVID pass to gain entry to a number of venues and events in England. Nightclubs, large indoor venues, bigger football stadiums, they're all going to require now either a negative lateral flow test or proof of vaccination for anyone over the age of 18.
Our reporter in the East Midlands, Will Hollis, joins us now from Nottingham. Just talk us through these new restrictions. What are they?
Yes, good morning. Just to give you an idea, before we get into it, these are restrictions that are coming into place with England. COVID passes have already been a part of the system for a couple of weeks now in Northern Ireland, Scotland, and of course Wales. Where does it apply? It applies in nightclubs, indoor unseated venues of more than 500 people, so that's maybe your bigger concert gigs, unseated outdoor venues with more than 4,000 people, and any venue that's got 10,000 plus people, so that might be your big stadiums, that might be your football or your rugby or things like cricket here in Nottinghamshire. Who does it apply to? Well, it's over 18, so anyone that's of that age. And what do you actually need to do? Basically, it's a COVID passport. Some people often refer to it as a vaccine passport. It's strictly it's not exactly true. You can show your vaccine status, you can show that you've got 2 jabs, but you can also show that you've had a negative lateral flow test or a PCR test. So even if you haven't had a vaccine, you can still get into places like nightclubs just by showing that status. You can show it on your phone through the NHS app, either the NHS app or the NHS COVID app. There are 2. We remember that caused a lot of confusion for some people when they were trying to use one or the other. If you don't have a phone, if you don't have digital capacity, you can also get it sent to your door. So this is coming into play from today. Boosters on top of what the Plan B restrictions that have already come into place, like masks in more places, as well as the working from home order, which we saw on Monday.
Well, people are sort of coming to terms with the fact that there are going to be new restrictions on their lives. England sort of catching up now with the rest of the United Kingdom. I know you've been speaking to some locals. Are people sort of feeling weary or sort of, accepted it?
Yeah, sure. Nottingham's a pretty switched-on city, but from the people that I spoke to, you'd be quite surprised, actually, as to how many people don't know that this next stage of Plan B restrictions had come into place, and they didn't know anything about a COVID pass. We did manage to find enough people who did understand the restrictions and had some differing views on it. Let's take a look at that now.
Not going to get vaccinated, so I'm not going to be going out clubbing when everything is asking for passports, because I won't have the capacity, and also it's kind of unsafe for me to do so.
This week I'm down in London attending a theatre in the West End. Insofar as I'm required to present the COVID passport, I'm more than happy to do so. I think it's a small price to pay to ensure that the public and the rest of the country remain safe.
I go to football and gigs, and the passport's getting in the way of me doing the things I want to do. So at the end of the day, I don't really think people need to have a vaccine passport to go somewhere.
I'm putting up with it, to tell the truth. I mean, it'd be nice if we didn't have to do it, but all in all, it's for the good of everybody, and it sort of does sort out the people that care about the other people, really.
I can see it being a bit of a nuisance. It's an extra procedure that you have to take for a somewhat normal night. But yeah, for me, I didn't really have too much of a problem with being vaccinated, just because you're kind of protecting your family, your friends, your loved ones.
To make sure that everyone's safe going forward in the new year and stuff, it's a small price to pay.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of opinions from the people that want to go into nightclubs and sporting events that will need to have a COVID pass from today. But the Nighttime Industries Association, which represents nightclubs and bars up and down the country, they're not very happy about it. You know that hospitality and the leisure industry has been significantly affected during COVID. Here's a quote from the CEO. They said that we are disappointed that MPs have today voted into law COVID passports. This is a quote from yesterday. But what they have said is that in Scotland Scotland and Wales, where they've got similar restrictions, there's up to 30% decline in trade, and that it's also a slippery slope that they're going down, and that this should go no further. There are a lot of people that are very upset about this in those industries particularly, and now they're asking for the return of things like the furlough scheme, which we obviously saw scrapped just a couple of months ago. So with the restrictions, a lot of people in business would like to see some more support for the industries.
Will, thank you very much for that. That's Will Hollis there with the latest on that.
Well, joining us now is Alan Miller, co-founder of the Together Declaration Fighting Against Vaccine Passes. Thank you very much for joining us. So if you want to go to a nightclub, a large venue, you're going to have to show this QR code. What is making you so nervous about it?
Well, it would mean a complete reorganisation of our way of life, actually. The idea that you have to show me your papers to participate in society was never something that we'd agreed to. It's never been something that we'd discussed. It's 20 months down the road, it's a situation where on the one hand, it's an imposition on business that has enormous logistical considerations, a reduction in revenue we've seen in many places. But actually what we've seen as well is it has nothing to do with health, because we know now that you can be vaccinated and transmit, or not vaccinated and have very high immunity. So transmissions can occur with vaccine passports, and we've seen in places where they're highly vaccinated and they have vaccine passports that that's the case. And so it's a pantomime. It doesn't actually work from the point of view of health. It's an attempt to say we're doing something, but it's very, very damaging. And in a free society, you should never have to show your health status to strangers. So it doesn't have any benefits from health and the saying that's been done. It has enormous consequences for the whole idea of engaging freely in society. And it's a performance that is actually very damaging. That's why we're saying people should sign the togetherdeclaration.org and actually let their MPs and others know about it.
You say showing passes to strangers, but you're showing passes to people who have concerns that they may run a nightclub or a venue where large numbers of people coming together. There is, at the moment, a health risk in that, and they're just trying to make sure that people are being as safe as possible.
Well, if you look at the last 4 weeks, the evidence that's come out of South Africa, Dr. Coetzee and the woman who actually raised the notion, actually let the world know about Omicron, they've said that the symptoms are very mild. We know that transmissions are rapid, but that often happens when you've got a new variant and it goes through the population. If we're going to have a situation where we keep imposing measures and restrictions every time there's a variant, we're not going to do what Chris Whitty actually said when he was right about this, which was to live with it like the flu. Actually, nightclubs have not been calling for this at all. As you know, the previous presenter said that we've seen losses of 30%, actually up to 50% in some cases. If you look in Manhattan as well, where they've got them now, and actually now they've got them for 5-year-olds. But losses have been up to 60% in some places in Manhattan when they introduced them. So they've been imposed onto licensed premises. They have not been asked for. There's no evidence whatsoever that's been attempted to be presented that they have any use whatsoever. They don't, a vaccine passport doesn't have anything to do about stopping transmissions. And yet it's being hoisted upon us. And almost like people are very confused. You can see that. You say, well, look, we hope that if it ends up keeping people safe, maybe that's a price worth paying. But no one's attempted to present any of that evidence, not in Parliament or not to the public, because it doesn't exist. The only evidence that does exist is that it actually is an imposition from a business point of view, but also from the point of view of our civil liberties, and it's very wrong.
Very much. Alan Miller, for putting across your perspective. Appreciate your time. Co-founder of the Together Declaration Fighting Against Vaccine Passes.
You're watching The Great British Breakfast. Coming up, we're going to break down the latest inflation figures released this morning. They're not anything but grim reading this morning. That's to come after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Some brighter skies about first thing this morning and a better chance, I think, in the north and the east of some sunshine by the afternoon. Otherwise, largely cloudy skies with some rain, mostly associated with this weather front, which is currently sinking south across Scotland, pushing into Northern Ireland, parts of northern England as well. Meanwhile, high pressure over the continent extends its influence across southern parts of the UK. That is going to bring a return to more widespread settled weather through the next few days, but for the time being, it's introducing a lot of cloud cover. Cloudy skies for the south of England, parts of mid and south Wales. Also this cloudier zone associated with a weather front that's sinking south, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England. But a good chance elsewhere of sunny skies once any early fog lifts. And temperatures again above average for the time of year, 11 to 13 Celsius, a mild afternoon to come. Now, this area of cloud and outbreaks of light rain and drizzle pushes north again, clearing from Northern Ireland as well as northern England during Wednesday evening and moving through the rest of Scotland. There'll also be a lot of cloud, some cloud covering hills across Wales and the southwest, southern England as well. But clear spells in between for southern Scotland, parts of northern and eastern England will lead to a chilly start tomorrow morning and a few fog patches first thing as well. But on the whole, it's a grey start for many. A lot of cloud, particularly in the south and the west, and this area of rain moving through the far north of Scotland during the morning. After lunch, I think that rain clears, and then for the vast majority, it's actually looking dry tomorrow afternoon. A lot of cloud on the map, but there will be some sunshine, particularly in eastern parts of England and Scotland, and temperatures are trending downwards, so that it's turning colder later this week. But high pressure extends across the UK during Thursday, Friday and into the weekend. That will lead to a lot of settled weather, still a lot of cloud, particularly in the west, and also turning colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
It's coming up to 8:30 here on the Great British Breakfast. Now, 2 women will be sentenced later for their parts in the murder of the 16-month-old Star Hobson from West Yorkshire. Star's mum, Frankie Smith, was cleared of her daughter's killing yesterday, but was found guilty of causing or allowing Star's death to take place.
Smith's partner, Savannah Brockhill, was found guilty of Star's murder, and the pair will be sentenced this afternoon. This report from our Yorkshire and Humber reporter Kevin Larkin contains some content you may find distressing.
16-month-old Star Hobson, another child failed in Britain. Failed by her mum's partner who ended her short life. Failed by her mum who allowed Star to be killed. And failed by the authorities who didn't prevent her death.
Star, do you love your mums? Do you love me?
Love was in short supply at their home in Keighley, where Star endured months of beatings and psychological harm from those who the toddler should have felt safest with. Star's mum, Frankie Smith, was cleared of murder at Bradford Crown Court yesterday, but the 20-year-old was convicted of causing or allowing her daughter's death.
If you want to keep your kneecaps, I suggest you stop sending her them. She's with the #1 psycho.
28-year-old Savannah Brockhill, who ended Star's life less than a month after this video was taken.
She was crying and then she stopped crying and then she was sick. And now she's just a little bit floppy, to be honest with you.
Prosecutors described the punching, kicking and stamping to Star's abdomen, which ended her life in September last year. Jurors also saw CCTV of Brockhill hitting Star 21 times in 3 hours, moments after this was filmed, as Star sat in a car seat. This was just 8 days before her death.
To me, she was just pure evil. Just can't believe she could do something like that to a baby girl. It was like, as I say, we were just a quiet, lovely family, and she ascended from the bowels of hell and just completely devastated, wrecked our family and took poor baby Star's life.
David Fawcett's partner Anita was one of 5 people who reported concerns to social services. Once again, questions are being asked of those whose job it is to protect children.
Questions have absolutely got to be asked of Bradford Council's children's services in this case, because what we saw was the great-grandmother and indeed others expressed their concerns well in advance of this horrific murder, expressing their concerns to Bradford Council's Children's Services, and yet nothing was done. And that's why I really do feel that there has to be a change in leadership at the council. I feel that this is the last straw. We have a struggling children's services at Bradford that has gone on for far too long, and things have absolutely got to change and questions have got to be asked, because this is neglect by the Children's Services Department at Bradford Council.
The Labour leader of Bradford Council, Susan Hinchcliffe, said, "Star was let down and we all want to know if anything could have been done differently. It is essential, therefore, that lessons are learned from Star's terrible death so that we can better protect our children." A local child safeguarding review into Star's death will be published next month. It comes less than a fortnight after the stepmother of Arthur Labinjo Hughes, Emma Tustin, was found guilty of his murder. Star's death will feed into the review ordered after Arthur's death by the government. Brockhill and Smith, both from Keighley, will be sentenced later today for their roles in the death of Star Hobson. Kevin Larkin for GB News.
It's 8:30. You're with the Great British Breakfast this morning, and that fantastic report from Kevin Larkin there.
Now, Professor Chris Whitty has warned hospitals could face a surge in COVID admissions as the UK records the highest number of cases since January. 59,610 new COVID cases were recorded yesterday. 633 of which were of the Omicron variant. Unofficial evidence suggests the Omicron variant is milder than others, but new restrictions aiming to curb its spread have been introduced nonetheless.
Well, here to help us find out more is Professor Andrew Preston, microbiologist at the University of Bath. Do you feel, as sort of I do, and I think lots of do, just absolute fatigue, but also despair?
To some degree, yes, but unfortunately, this is the situation we're in. So feeling despair is not actually going to help with it. It's something that we're facing and we have to deal with, unfortunately.
But are we facing what we're told we're facing? This is the trouble, because everybody's saying Omicron, it's spreading so fast, which obviously is happening. But it's the effect it's having. And when you're told that somebody's died with Omicron in hospital, that's not the same as dying of Omicron. We still don't know whether it's as bad as people are telling us.
No, absolutely. We don't. And there's only one way to find out, and that will happen over the next few weeks. But of course, as you know, I think we've discussed, the concern is when you don't know, you do have to put in some sort of measures to prepare for what could be a significant surge. Hopefully it won't be, and people will then complain that all this scaremongering as they see it. But of course, we can't just blindly walk into a situation where suddenly we end up with many, many thousands of cases where a proportion of those become serious disease. There has to be some preparation put in place.
Thank you so much for talking to us this morning. Really appreciate your time. Professor Andrew Preston, microbiologist at the University of Bath.
Now, breaking story this morning, inflation in the UK has hit its highest level in 10 years, ahead of the Bank of England's crunch monetary policy meeting. That's on Thursday. Well, the consumer price index rose by 5.1% in the 12 months to November. That's up from 4.2% in October. That was itself the steepest incline for a decade and more than double the central bank's target.
David Buick joins the programme, market commentator at Aquis Exchange. David, a very good morning. Lovely to see you. Tell us, what does this increase...
Morning, Rosie. Morning, Simon.
Morning.
What does this increase actually mean? It's steep.
It can't really come as any great surprise, because I think when we know what's happened with the supply chain, leaving so many people short of goods, whether it be food, clothes or anything else, and the cost of shipping, where a container 6 months ago cost £3,000, now it's £16,000, that this is gathering momentum. And you saw probably the figures of wholesale inflation in the United States yesterday was an eye-watering 9.6%. Now, we've been told by the various central banks, Jay Powell of the Federal Reserve, who have their meeting tonight, which will make very, very interesting reading, and also by Andrew Bailey, and also by others around the place, including Madame Lagarde in the ECB, that this inflation is transitory. I think there's plenty of evidence to suggest that it isn't. What does transitory mean? Short-lived. But this is going to take some months, if not a year or two, to iron itself out. And the fact remains that if inflation is not knocked on the head with a mallet, a metaphorical one, then, of course, what happens is that we've got less disposable income, we buy less at the shops, growth falls, and we get unemployment. Now, the unemployment data yesterday was terrific. And, you know, there are now that Boris Johnson has suggested that more curbs have got to be implemented, which they are. Then, of course, we look at the hospitality sector and also retail and entertainment, and any thoughts of the 6.8% GDP for the UK for 2021, frankly, Rosie, is fanciful as far as I'm concerned, because the last quarter looks like it's going to be pretty desperate stuff. So Andrew Bailey tomorrow at the Bank of England is left in a quandary. His committee, which has got 9 members, voted 7-2 to maintain the level of interest rates. The betting was 2 weeks ago that it was 80% certain that rates would go up by a symbolic 0.15% to 0.25%, with comment that we would almost certainly get 3 further increases throughout 2022. But the fact that we are now in a situation where the recovery is stuttering, there is a case, and I think that Andrew Bailey, who has received an enormous amount of stick for not doing something already, and you're probably both amused, and I was absolutely gobsmacked to hear that the IMF officially complained to the Bank of England, get the rates up and show some leadership and take action. Well, to be honest with you, I don't want to hear from them. Their track record over the years in regard to interest rates and inflation has been at best average. And if that kind of dialogue is going on, could it please go by email or post rather than be splattered all over the headlines? But nonetheless, I think we are probably going to see tomorrow nothing, but I think you might get a full, meaningful increase in the February meeting. There isn't one in January, unless out of emergency they decide to have one.
It's the psychological impact, isn't it, of a raise of interest rates, and presumably that's what the Bank of England have got in mind. They don't particularly want to send that message out when people are still very jittery about everything.
Absolutely right, Simon. I mean, when you think the way that the average consumer has been absolutely hammered, he's had the biggest tax rate rise in living memory. The cost of mortgages have gone up in order to meet what we think will be an increase in interest rates. We've been people out in the shop seeing prices rise everywhere. You guys look like the sort of people who go out to have lunch or dinner now and again. Well, from where I come from, it's not a thing. Prices in restaurants and things like that are up 25% in what they were a year ago. And this, of course, feeds through with people, and it's unavoidable. But, you know, the fact remains is that we have to take action. But I do understand that getting the balance right without putting, you know, sticking a pin in the balloon of recovery and dealing with inflation is very finely balanced.
Well, it's good to see you, and I'm sure we'll see you before Christmas, won't we? So I'm not going to wish you happy Christmas yet, but
God bless you both. Nice to talk to you.
Good to see you. Take care. There.
Now, it's coming up to 20 minutes to 9 here on the programme. Now, the NHS, or the government say, the NHS needs your help to achieve the booster target of nearly 1 million jabs a day. Find out more after this.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It's 20 minutes to 9. You're watching The Great British Breakfast with Rosie and Simon. A very good morning to you.
Now, it might not be in our headlines, but that doesn't mean it's over. 2 weeks after Storm Arwen left over 240,000 people without power in the northeast of England, there are still some people relying on generators.
Well, as Northern Power Grid continues to work towards full power restoration, communities in very rural Northumberland are still clearing the aftermath and dealing with the consequences. And our North East of England reporter Rachel Sweeney has been to Northumberland. She was there at the beginning, and she says this is far from over.
Storm Arwen ripped through the northeast of England 18 days ago. Roads remain obstructed, the landscape looks destroyed, and local people are trying to keep the area moving. That's despite power blackouts as Northern Power Grid works to complete full restoration.
As a farmer driving around, it's disheartening to see 300-year-old trees that have just been uprooted, snapped, not just one or two. We've got 15 big beeches, 4 big oaks, 200 acres of trees that have, that we've grown over 40 years, have gone flat overnight.
Jamie Wood had guests staying at 5 of his holiday huts when winds of 98 miles per hour tore through Prendwick. He managed to get customers to safety, but he did lose 3 cows, and he's still unsure how many sheep survived. Despite his own struggles, he supplied 3 other families with generators for free.
There's one chap still got one generator that's running his fridges for his meat business. Another lady delivered a generator back 2 days ago. She had it for a week. Yeah, I gave them out. They were sitting in the shed, so people had no electric for a week. What's giving a generator for a week, to someone who's got no power? When you've got fridges full of meat, you can't afford to lose all that meat.
Storms Arwen and Barra made national headlines for just a few days, but the reality is that weeks later, people here are still relying on generators and goodwill. In some parts of Northumberland, the only way to pass through roads is by tractor or quad bike.
Northern Power Grid has been criticised for its response to Storm Arwen, and an investigation is underway by regulator Ofgem.
It's been absolutely atrocious. We've been overlooked. We haven't had the backup, we haven't had the resources. It's been horrendous for people living in the countryside. We've had people in isolation for 10, 12 days without electricity, no power, no heating, no cooking, no kettles. It's been an absolute disaster. It was only on the Tuesday, Wednesday, I was getting emails in telling me that they're going to put it back on in an hour or 3 hours. So if you didn't have electricity, how did you get connected to the internet? Imagine what would have happened if for 12 days there was no electricity in London. This is what people up here have had to suffer.
Northern Power Grid has apologised to customers and said teams are changing the way they communicate with customers in power outages. But there's one thing that will never change, and that's a rural community's determination to pull together and recover.
Well, that was Rachel Sweeney with that report, and it's good to do stories that the media concentrates on a story, then moves on and then forgets, and you're left with the aftermath of that. But as you can see, there's still many people really suffering as a result of that storm. And as you pointed out, if that had been in Westminster, I don't think it would have been 12 days before they had their power restored. Anyway.
It's 8:45. Now, the Prime Minister and the NHS are appealing for volunteers to help them reach the target of delivering 1 million booster jabs a day. The Prime Minister wants boosters offered to all eligible adults by the end of the year. And despite hours-long queues, I should say, at some walk-in vaccination sites, over 513,000 boosters were given out yesterday, taking the total number of third jabs to more than 24 million. With just 42% of the population aged 12 and over triple vaccinated, there's still a long way to go.
Well, Richard Lee is Chief Operating Officer at St John Ambulance. He's a paramedic as well and joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
How is it going?
Our people are amazing. They've stepped up in huge numbers. And today there will be St John Ambulance people at over 300 locations across the country supporting the booster efforts.
There's a report today of some people queuing over 5 hours to try and get that booster jab. There was huge demand on the NHS app on the website. It was crashing because so many people were trying to book a booster. What is the problem? Is there sort of a very initial surge of lots of people who want the jab, but actually the majority of people don't? Is it that logistically we don't have enough equipment or enough people to do the jabs? What's going to be the hold-up?
So this is a huge undertaking, and our message here at St John Ambulance is it's really important that we get people to take appointments when they're offered or sign up for walk-in jabs. The more of us that get vaccinated, triple vaccinated, the more of us that take the booster, the better things will be for the country and the more chance we've got of returning to some sort of normality. This pandemic is not over. This is a serious disease, and getting triple vaccinated is the way forward. And we're encouraging people to come forward to the centres that we're operating with the NHS and the centres that are across the country.
Richard, my experience of getting a booster was it was seamless. The organisation was amazing, and the people were calm and they knew what they were doing. The difficulty, of course, when suddenly you've got this huge extra pressure, is that the left hand ceases to know what the right hand is doing. Is there a worry about that?
So we're bolstering capacity for the NHS at these centres. We've provided over 1.2 million hours of volunteering over the last 12 months. That's over 700 years of time in 1 year of volunteering. And that's why here at St John Ambulance we are providing additional people. Over 4,000 shifts this week of people providing additional capacity at vaccine centres to make sure that the huge numbers of people turning up get their vaccine and get the best experience they can. But let's not be under any illusion here. This is a national mass vaccination campaign. This is the biggest thing that's ever been done in healthcare in this country. In any of our lifetimes. And so the huge numbers of people need huge resources. And I'm sure that will lead to the odd occasion where people do have to wait. But it's worth waiting for, folks. Turn up, get your booster, please.
Richard Lee, thank you very much, Chief Operating Officer at St John's Ambulance, as we've been hearing that the government and the NHS are asking for more volunteers.
Now, new research by Co-op suggests almost half of UK adults can't cook a full Christmas dinner from scratch. Reasons given include having never been taught how to cook anything and not having the space or the equipment. For those who attempt to cook, cranberry sauce topped the list of festive foods unlikely to be made from scratch, with 81% of people claiming they just couldn't do it.
TV chef Leslie Waters has partnered with the Co-op to encourage Brits to get in the kitchen. So a cranberry sauce, that seems quite basic to me. It's just cranberries and maybe a bit of sugar and some water, surely.
Well, yeah, and if you're feeling like it, a splash of port and a bit of orange juice and orange zest. And it only takes about 5 minutes to cook. But I think a lot of it is, with people, it's confidence. I've been teaching for a long time now, and I think that there is an awful lot of fabulous cookery on television, but some of it is quite complicated. And I think that if you never grew up being taught how to cook and you're kind of in that generation, then cooking can be quite a scary thing. And we run quite a lot of beginner classes. And I always remember this guy arriving looking really scared and saying, "Oh, my wife got this for me and I can't cook." And by the end of the day, he left the kitchen thinking he was Jamie Oliver. I mean, it was just so wonderful to see him become liberated in the kitchen. And the fab thing is now there is help, because I think because if people haven't got the skills, then they don't know how to use the leftovers. And then there's this whole big thing with food waste. So Co-op have partnered with Hubbub, with charity, who have got these fantastic, wonderful community kitchens all over the country. There's 250 at the moment, but the Co-op are going to help them have another 250. They're not food banks. Anyone can go to them. They can take food to help with wastage. They can bring food there. They can take it away. But they also can learn about growing food. They can have cookery lessons in some of them. And it's about the community. So it's a community fridge. People who run it are generally volunteers. And it's a really amazing thing, especially for people that really have got no idea how to cook. And I know that sounds a bit strange, but 47% of people wouldn't know how to cook a Christmas dinner from scratch. I think that's amazing. Are you like that, Simon?
I'm completely. And look, when you're talking about food waste, do I look as though if there would ever be any food waste? But hang on a minute. I wasn't taught to cook at school, and it's my biggest regret. There are some things that should be taught in school. Cooking is one of them. Finances are another. There are some things that really should be taught at a young age. And here I am at my grand old age. I cooked once, and 2 people ended up in casualty, and that was as far as it ever went. And I promised you that's my only experience of cooking. It terrified me. I'm terrified in the kitchen. I'm very lucky that others in the kitchen can cook. But I have
Simon, you need to come to a community kitchen, all right, and I'll give you some lessons. And I promise you within
one thing that I think people are really scared of is gravy. How do you do... Honestly, I think we could all do with a lesson, because when I say gravy granule, I think, please no. So can you tell us, and specifically Simon, maybe you could just do the gravy on Christmas Day?
Oh, lovely. That'd be nice.
What do we do?
Another portion.
Okay, so what you can do to help you is you can make a bit of onion gravy the day before just by frying off some onions in a little bit of butter slowly until they go lovely and brown. And then you can add a bit of wine or sherry and a bit of stock and reduce so that you get a lovely sort of syrupy concentrated onion gravy. The next day, when you make your gravy and you lift the bird out, and the important thing is you let the turkey rest for about 40 minutes. You can cover it with foil and then cover it with a couple of tea towels. And remember, it will carry on cooking while you make your gravy and finish off everything else. Pour off the excess fat in the roasting tin, leave a tiny bit there, sprinkle over a couple of teaspoons of plain flour, and then just cook that on the top until it goes a sort of light biscuity colour. Then you can add your stock and your sherry or your wine, your bit of onion gravy going in there. I sometimes add a teaspoon of red currant jelly and simmer for a good 10 to 15 minutes, adding extra stock if it gets too thick, and you want it to be nice and syrupy. What some people do is when they pull the fat out of the roasting tin before they put the flour in, they might dab the roasting tin with a little bit of kitchen paper just to absorb a bit more fat, but you want to try and leave all those delicious turkey sediment juices in the bottom there, and that's the thing that's going to make your gravy taste really great. Simon, you can have a go at doing that.
Well, you lost me at the word frying, or you ring Deliveroo. I mean, I tell you what, it's too much hassle.
No, Simon, you need to come and see me. I'll sort you out. If you would like to know more about
No, stop it. Stop it. No, enough. I know what you're doing and don't do it, but nice to talk to you. Leslie, really good to see you.
I'll send you a cookbook.
Thank you very much. I can give it to someone for Christmas next year. Thank you very much.
Can you do that? You can do beans on toast. It's not that you can't cook anything.
It's
boiled egg.
I got the neatest kitchen of anyone because nothing's ever used.
You can do toast. That's it.
I can do toast.
Right. That sounds.
But I like it black.
Oh no, you shouldn't do that.
No, well, I know. You see, there's something else. I get that wrong.
Right, it's 5 minutes to 9.
It's gone well. This is sad.
It is sad news. It's hard to go from hilarious to sad.
No, it's sad in that. So David Suchet, of course, Poirot, one of the best actors this country has ever produced, he was due to have his investiture. He was going to be knighted by the Queen today, and then last night he tweeted out that he'd been tested positive for coronavirus. And you know, that's awful. Of course, best known for playing Hercule Poirot in the Agatha Christie detective series. He's 75 years old. He was due to be knighted for services to drama and charity. But as a result of testing positive, well, he can't go.
Yeah, well, according to the newspaper, Christmas Day, it could be up to 1 million of us isolating on Christmas Day because you've got coronavirus.
I'll start anything with according to the newspapers.
Well, just try not to make it...
Actually, the pinch of salt is something... This is probably the only thing I could have.
But Suchet testing positive. He's unavailable. Someone who is going to go, Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton.
There he goes now.
He's going to be knighted at Windsor Castle for his services to motorsport. Days after Hamilton missed out on what would have been a record-breaking 8th world title in Abu Dhabi as Max Verstappen overtook him on the final lap. The finish was marred by controversy and 2 rejected appeals of the race result by Hamilton's team from Mercedes, but the 7-time champion will become just the 4th Formula One driver who's been knighted.
You can imagine the Queen going, oh, missed him.
No, you cannot imagine the Queen doing that. Can anyone imagine the Queen would do that? No.
No, OK. That is it from us for this morning. We're back tomorrow morning. Up next, The Briefing with Darren McCaffrey. Thanks for your time.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Some brighter skies about first thing this morning and a better chance, I think, in the north and the east of some sunshine by the afternoon. Otherwise, largely cloudy skies with some rain, mostly associated with this weather front, which is currently sinking south across Scotland, pushing into Northern Ireland, parts of northern England as well. Meanwhile, high pressure over the continent extends its influence across southern parts of the UK. That is going to bring a return to more widespread settled weather through the next few days. But for the time being, it's introducing a lot of cloud cover. Cloudy skies for the south of England, parts of mid and south Wales. Also this cloudier zone associated with a weather front that's sinking south, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England. But a good chance elsewhere of sunny skies once any early fog lifts. And temperatures again above average for the time of year, 11 to 13 Celsius, a mild afternoon to come. Now this area of cloud and outbreaks of light rain and drizzle pushes north again, clearing from Northern Ireland as well as northern England during Wednesday evening and moving through the rest of Scotland. There'll also be a lot of cloud, some cloud covering hills across Wales and the southwest, southern England as well. But clear spells in between for southern Scotland, parts of northern and eastern England will lead to a chilly start tomorrow morning and a few fog patches first thing as well. But on the whole, it's a grey start for many. A lot of cloud, particularly in the south and the west, and this area of rain moving through the far north of Scotland during the morning. After lunch, I think that rain clears, and then for the vast majority, it's actually looking dry tomorrow afternoon. A lot of cloud on the map, but there will be some sunshine, particularly in eastern parts of England and Scotland, and temperatures are trending downwards.